power that's used in war when they get ugly. Yeah, I'm savage, but sicker than your average bet. Fly scientist, but still pay with cash and checks. You ask for checks, the same way you ask for sex. While you on your best behavior, I'd rather flex. See, I'm a street scholar artist that speaks how.
Streets reporter of the New World Order, editor-in-chief for Black Fox News. I want y'all to walk onto this journey with me to actually watch this documentary that's actually had Black America and the National Basketball Association and Black and white Jewish communities throughout the country really zooming in on what anti-Semitism is, and if that NBA star Kyrie Irving is being anti-Semitic. Now we know in the literal sense, in the dictionary definition sense, he can't really be anti-Semitic because of what the Semitic people are. Or can he, because if we really look into the dictionary definition of what it means to be Semitic, and I'm gonna look it up right now, just on the spot. A Semite, Semitic is of or relating to the Semites, or of or relating to the languages of the family, including Hebrew and Arabic. A Semite is a member of any of the peoples supposed to be descended from Shem, son of Noah, based off Genesis 10:21, including the Jews, Arabs, Assyrians, and Phoenicians. So, and then you kind of get into I feel like it kind of is similar to when somebody says, oh, you can't be racist if you're black. And because of the nature of what it is. However, can black people be racist towards black people? You know what I'm saying? Like, can black people aid? I feel like if you aiding in racism against black people, then you can be racist. You know what I'm saying? Or that in my book, that's like enough to consider you to be a racist as well. Like if you're ushering in racism to your own community, you just as bad as them crackers that's doing that. You know what I'm saying? So, it can the same be said for Semites. Like, can you be a Semite and still be anti-Semitic? And I think ultimately by in the literal sense you can't be, but is the video what it all comes down to? Does it contribute to or facilitate towards hatred against European skinned Jewish people? And let's watch and find out. Is this selective outrage or is this justified outrage? Was Kyrie Irving ignorant or hasty in even sharing this information on to his social media platform, to his millions of followers, or is he justified? You know what I mean? The man did apologize or whatever, he had to take his 5-game suspension. Is that enough? We gonna get to the bottom of these answers. As the editor-in-chief of Black Fox News, I'm proud to be able to at least lead my people towards walking in truth and not judging or making decisions about these things that happen in pop culture without having access to all of the knowledge. Now, I noticed that this documentary was at one point being allowed to be rented for just a few dollars, like $2-3, probably sold less than $10 or around $10. And very quickly, it jumped up to being $49.99 as far as the cost of this documentary to purchase through Amazon Prime. And it was being able to be rented for $11.99. Now, a lot of people might not have that to even be renting to see this. A lot of people who want to see it A lot of people might not have Amazon or Amazon Prime, might not be comfortable with the app. A lot of people, there's a lot of people who's definitely not trying to buy it, spend $50 to buy it. But it's very interesting. I wonder who upped the price. Like, was it the maker of the film or Amazon or both of them? You know, but I don't want that to be a factor and determine people from seeing it, especially my people. If it is somehow a way to actually lead us to knowledge, and whether that be like pro the movie or anti the movie, like the knowledge still is what's important. And this company is run by the Graduation Party, so like we're all about knowledge. We're all about ascending through knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So walk with me on this journey. Walk with BFN, our constituency, as we go and zoom into this video and see what they's talking about. You know what I mean? So tune in. Let me get some popcorn. You know what I mean? You're now watching BFN IGTV, and we going in like this.
Where did Cain and Esau seed go? And who were the Horites? Have these nations infiltrated the mighty kingdoms of old? Who are the children of the wicked one? The great masqueraders, a hidden people to torment mankind and the Israelites. We must understand their ancient past. The books have been opened. Come out of her, my people. It's time for the truth. A lie cannot live forever. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Hebrews to Negroes and the Negro Network presents The End is Here Movie Workshop. For more information, go to www.hebrewstonegroesmovie.com or www.thenegronetwork.com.
Rebirth of a nation, Hebrew kingdom building.
Yourself, man. I know we're pretty popular, but some people are not familiar with you. My name is Akwete Basalama. Some people know me as Rabbi Akwete Ama. We are on the set of Reclaiming the Throne. We're taking what belongs to us.
Yes, yes.
So Da, which is snake, and Home, which is home, tells us that the Home, when we got to Lokoja, after crossing the Benue River, we divided ourselves into 3 groups. One group went to Ile-Ife, Ogomosho, and Bone. Those who went to Ile-Ife went by the name Ganwo, Mashi, and then La, Bone. Ganwo means that we are the Gadites. In those pictographs, what we call pingu, those symbols still used in the Fleshini shrine. When you look at the customs and traditions of the Gadangres in Ghana, you will notice that we've been keeping the customs, many of the customs that you read about in the Torah. The Anglo Arabs enact their Exodus story from Israel. They call this feast Chocho. When you come to the Gadangres celebrate a feast called Homowo. Homowo is actually the Passover narrative.
Okay. Introduce yourself. Yeah, you with the Truth is Unpopular shirt.
All right, I'm Brother Harold. And I'm just here to help to learn myself whatever I can do.
And you're on the set of Reclaiming the Throne.
Shalom, people. You know how we do all day, every day, representing the Hebrew Nation building. I'm with my man, Rabbi Kite Amma, all day, every day, representing Hebrew life, all day, every day. So you in. Shalom, shalom, shalom.
And this is one of the filmers. He's one of the filmers for that's filming Reclaiming the Throne. Hebrew Nation building. You guys heard of them. Hebrew Nation building.
Yeah. Right. Stay ready. Stay ready. Right.
Buried underneath the conscience of man lies the truth about our ancestors' homeland, the knowledge we once had before those days we were captured. And forced into the role of slavery to a foreign master, they did their best to break us, scatter and separate us, control and subjugate us, divide and educate us. But the covenant is with us, our religion forsake us. Jacob was the dream, and we his children, time to wake up.
Mistreated soul, bleeding broke, foolish up, dumb and revoked. 400 years, blood, sweat, and tears, and a coma slave. Now be awoke, reverse the curse that Moses spoke. Y'all be the king, no need to vote. Right or wrongs, reclaim the thrones, and take a stand like David told. Israel, we rise up, Judah, we rise up. Listen here, it said it's real that we should build and rise up. Take the throne, we get the zone, so lift them heads and eyes up. Free the people that set the book, no more holding them lies up. Israel, we rise up, Judah, we rise up. Listen here, it said it's real that we should build and rise up. Take the throne, we get the zone, so lift them heads and eyes up. Free the people that set the book, no more holding them lies up.
I remember when I was a little boy, I used to see all these white people walking around on Saturdays. And so I asked my mom, Mama, who are those white people walking around with black hats, black suits, beards, and long sideburns? And she said to me, Ronald, those are the Jews of the Bible. And so I asked her, who are we? And she said to me, we are the Gentiles. I never understood what a Gentile was or who black people were in the Bible until 2011. This is when the Most High showed me the truth, and the book Hebrews to Negroes was born.
Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up?
The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not
Races and religions, free to worship as they please. This too is America. Down in my heart, oh, deep, with Jesus, oh, deep down in my heart, really deep, really deep, really deep down in my heart. I got the love of Jesus. I got the love of Jesus. I got the love of Jesus. I got the love of Jesus in my heart. I got the love of Jesus deep in my heart. I got the love of Jesus. I got the love of Jesus. I got the love of Jesus deep down in my heart.
My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children.
For most black Americans, religion has been instilled to us by our parents and the black church. In addition, our history has been told to us by white America. In Africa, the Bantus people's true history has been clouded by European Jewish colonialism and Arab colonialism, all thanks to the slave trades. This is why we see half of Africa as belonging to Islam and the other half to the Roman Catholic Church. But what was our true heritage and way of life before foreigners invaded Africa? What was our language? What was our name? What was our traditions, customs, and what name did we ascribe to God, the creator of the universe? In Africa, many of our long-lost brothers separated us from slavery, pray to Allah 5 times a day, or they pray to a white Jesus. However, for centuries we have been tricked. We have upheld different religions with no questions asked, while missing the truth. Truth has been the missing ingredient all this time for us blacks in America. Now, it's a known fact that black people are naturally spiritual people. So it is no surprise that we look to our pastor for guidance. But we never seem to wonder why for centuries we have been praying to the same Jesus every other nation prays to, but it seems as though our prayers are not being answered. It seems that no matter how many times a day we pray to Allah or pray to a white Jesus, that our condition has not changed. Other nations continue to oppress, manipulate, take advantage of, and rise above us on every level. What is interesting, however, is that in the 21st century, we are seeing a massive awakening of self. Black people are reading their Bibles, and Deuteronomy 28 has turned on the light bulb of interest into searching for our true identity as it pertains to the Bible. After all, biblically, we should all descend from one of Noah's 3 sons. But our identity has been either Gentiles, Canaanites, Negroes, or African Americans. But here's the problem. The word Negro or African American doesn't tell us nothing about our heritage. And as we can see today on the streets, in certain churches, and on social media, black people are now finding out that they are the real lost children of Israel. In turn, they are realizing the Sephardic, Ashkenazi, and Mizrahi Jews in Israel are just religious converts with no biblical blood connection to the ancient 12 tribes of Israel. So why have we been deceived for so long? Why hasn't the black church for decades been aware of who we are according to biblical history? Well, for almost 400 years, we have been teaching the message that what has been passed down to us from the slave plantation religious minister was truth. Using one literate religious Negro, Specific messages can be pounded into the minds of Negro Christians or different denominations generation after generation. This message, which has been altered and manipulated for a specific agenda, becomes the standard of truth to the black Christian world, and here we are today in the 21st century. So it's no wonder why in Sunday school, as black children growing up, we were coloring images of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, King David, King Solomon, and Jesus with a white crayon. There's no wonder why the Black Christian Church and the Roman Catholic Church has been blessing the wrong chosen people of God and oppressing the real Israelites. So who is to blame? Is it the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Edomites, the Jewish Pharisees of old, or anyone of European descent? Is it partly our fault? Well, the seed of Edom, the seed of Cain, the synagogue of Satan, and Lucifer himself are the major confederate that has been against us for a very long time. But a time has come where God is waking up his lost sheep of Israel. We are possibly seeing an era where the time of the Gentiles is being fulfilled. Now the word fulfilled in the dictionary means come to an end. This is also the time where the natural branch of Israel is gearing up to take back its rightful position.
Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be.
So to understand the history of the Hebrew Israelites, we have to go back to Abraham. And when we talk about Abraham, we can't ignore the descendants of Cush and also the descendants of Shem.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Raamah, and Sabteka. And the sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth, and Calah. And Resen between Nineveh and Calah, the same as a great city. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram.
So according to extra-biblical reports of ancient scholars, what was the overall census of the skin complexion of the sons of Noah? Has the Roman Catholic Church and modern Judaism been lying to us all this time about the true ethnic origin and skin color of the major players of Noah's family tree in the Bible? regards to the foundation of all the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, there's a common notion to believe that Abraham and his wife Sarah were white-skinned, straight-haired individuals living in what is now called South Iraq. Despite what the Bible says, the false teaching that the sons of Abraham, the Ishmaelite Arabs, Isaac, Jacob, and the Israelites were light-skinned people, or what others may say olive-skinned, still holds strong to this day. So what exactly was the skin color or ethnicity of the forefathers of Terah and Abraham? To find this out, we need to travel up on the family tree to Shem and his descendants, meaning Arphaxad, Aram, Ashur, Elam, and Lud. Shem's 5 sons populated ancient Mesopotamia and parts of Asia Minor. Arphaxad in particular was a lot of the territory of modern-day Iraq, which in ancient times was the Sumerian land of Ur, where Terah, Abraham, and his family lived before traveling to the land of Canaan. In Genesis 24, Abraham makes his servant swear an oath by putting his hand underneath Abraham's thigh not to let his sons marry the daughters of the Canaanites. This tradition, called the Yerek Oath, by touching the thigh or foot of a master, was said to be common in 11th century AD in India. In India, the Hindu creator god Brahma had a daughter and half-sister for his wife named Saraswati. Now this sounds like similar stories in comparison to Abraham and Sarah in the Bible, doesn't it?
And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife.
Now what most people don't realize is that the answer to Abraham's ethnicity can be found in the sons of Cush and the Dravidian people of India, Sri Lanka, and South Asia.
And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldeans.
In ancient history, before the word Iraq existed, ancient Mesopotamia was inhabited by the Sumerians, which Sargon the Great referred to as Sa-Gig-Ga, or the black-headed peoples. The cities of Mesopotamia were Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, and Nineveh, in the land of Shinar. The language spoken by the Sumerians in the land of Ur in Iraq was cuneiform Sanskrit, similar to the cuneiform Sanskrit writing scholars seen today in the Dravidian language Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, and Malayalam. But how can this be? Isn't Arabic closer to Abraham's language? Are the people of Iraq today, the Chaldean Christian Iraqis and Muslim Iraqis, the descendants of Abraham? In all actuality, the answer is no. Before Arabic, Aramaic, and Paleo-Hebrew, cuneiform script was being used in the land of Ur, the land of Terah, Abraham's father. Cuneiform Sanskrit today is the parent of all the languages in India, especially the Indian Dravidian language Tamil. It most resembles the ancient language spoken during Abraham's time in the land of Ur, or modern-day Iraq. So if today's Dravidian and Indian are connected to the Shemitic peoples of Mesopotamia in the Bible, where does Abraham come into play and his future seed, the children of Israel? What is their connection to Cush? And remember, in the book of Genesis chapter 10, the beginning cities of Babel and Uruk of Iraq were built by Nimrod, the son of Cush. Well, let's take a look at the language of the Dravidian Indians in comparison to Hebrew and the ancient Semitic, Sumerian, Akkadian, Proto-Babylonian, Assyrian language of Mesopotamia at the time. Then we need to look into the bloodline of Cush, its influence in Mesopotamia, and its connection to India. Then we can conclude that the early Hebrew forefathers, meaning Peleg, Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah, and Abraham, were a mixture of Shem and a little bit of Cush. This is one of many pieces of evidence that can be used to prove that the 12 tribes of Israel were not white-skinned people.
And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.
Now the Dutch East Indian slave ship Merman, between the 1600s to the 1700s AD, was regularly transporting anywhere from 150 to 400 slaves annually from South India, Burma, and Bengal. The Dutch seized Portuguese settlements on the Malabar coast in India in the mid-1600s, and because of this, a large number of slaves were sent to the Indian state of Kerala, to Batavia, which is in Java, Indonesia, Ceylon, which is Sri Lanka, or Elam, and the Cape in South Africa, and elsewhere to work on plantations. Many of these so-called East Indians were kidnapped by the Muslims and sold at the city called Cochin to the Dutch slave holders. The Arab slave trade of the East African Baptist Israelites during the 8th century shipped slaves all across the Eastern Hemisphere, including Madagascar. By the 16th century AD, the Dutch, including other European countries, got involved with the capturing of slaves from East Africa, Madagascar, the Malabar coast, the Coromandel coast, Bengal, and Indonesia. During the 18th century, a high number of slaves in indentured service were taken from India and East Africa to do slave work in the Americas, the Caribbean, and South Africa, which was called the Cape. Now, does this hint to the curses of Israel? Now, wait till you see some of the Hebrew influences in the language of these South Asian nations. The language of South India is Tamil and Malayalam, and the language of Sri Lanka is Tamil and Sinhalese. Is there proof that the people in India are the descendants of Abraham's Semitic ancestors that live in the land of Ur, Iraq? Well, thanks to scholars like Dr. K. Loganatha Munarayan from Malaysia, the late Professor A. Kadasivam from Sri Lanka, and the Kish Temple in ancient Samaria, Iraq, we can now prove that the ancestors of the modern-day East Indian originally lived in Mesopotamia during biblical times. In a few, I will let the language of the ancient Sumerians in Iraq and the Dravidian people in South India reveal some striking truths in regards to the sons of Shem. Also, you will see how the mother tongue of the Mandingo Soninke tribe people in Senegal, Gambia, Mali, and Guinea shows evidence of influence from ancient Babylon, Assyria, the same place the Hebrew Israelites were exiled to in the Bible. It is also a known fact that the ancient writing script of the Mandingo Soninke Baptist people in the 11th century AD resembled the same Aramaic Hebrew script used in Iberia when the Black Moors and the Black Israelites ruled the land. But before we get started, let's get a first-hand account of where some of the Black Israelites lived in Africa and their place of origin by the Black Muslims in northern Nigeria. One of the largest culturally homogeneous group of Black Muslims is in Central West Africa with the Hausa people. There are many different histories of the origin of the Hausa Black Muslims, but the common consensus is that the Hausas originally started off through the North African Hamitic Berber lineage from Egypt, which is Mizraim in the Bible, and Libya, which is Put in the Bible. Over time, during the Assyrian invasion of Egypt in the 7th century BC, and the invasion of Africa by the Black Ishmaelite Arabs in the 7th century AD, the Hausa people experienced a Semitic gene flow from Mesopotamia, which is also known as Iraq and Arabia. Today, the Hausa speak an Afro-Asiatic language which is related to Hebrew, Amharic, the North African Hamitic dialects, and Somalian Egyptian dialects. The Hausa people mostly live in North Nigeria, Chad, and Niger. The majority religion now is Islam for the Hausa people, but prior to the 1500s, many houses were pagan worshippers who often dealt in sun god worship, which they call Ra or Rana, similar to the Egyptian sun god Ra. Because of their history of mixing with other nations, including their Bantus, Negro slaves, genetically the houses have a mixture of Israelite, Canaanite, Cushite, Egyptian, and Semitic ancestry. According to their autosomal DNA, their genetic stock is mostly from ancient Egypt and ancient Kush or Nubia. Now here's where it gets very interesting. In 1849, the Biafran Igbo Israelites were conquered by the British. 3 years later, in 1852, the British conquered the Benin, Edo, Beni Israelites in South Nigeria. Between 1899 and 1903, the British, led by Sir Frederick Lugard in the Battle of Kano, were successful in defeating the Sokoto Caliphate and the Hausa people. After this, Sir Frederick Lugard held the title of the first Governor General of Nigeria, the last Governor of Southern Nigeria, the last Governor of Northern Nigeria, and the Governor also of Hong Kong in China. The British eventually placed the Hausa people in political power over Nigeria and the Biafran Igbo Israelites who strongly resisted British rule. This would become the catalyst for the Biafran War in the 1960s by the Hausa-dominated Nigerian government and Igbo Israelite Biafrans. Now, before the British even conquered Nigeria, there was a man named Muhammad Bello, an ancestor of the Hausa people in the Borno state, who was the second black Arab sultan of the North Nigerian Sokoto Caliphate in the early 1800s. Now, Muhammad Bello, he quoted in his records, "The Taurud and Taurud people, it is said, were originally Jews. Others say Christians, that they came from the land between two rivers, the Nile and the Euphrates, and established themselves next to the Jews who inhabited the island of Cape Verde." Now, this is also seen in our Bible in the book of Genesis, chapter 15, verses 18.
The same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates."
Now, Muhammad Bello also stated that the kingdom of Mali is an ancient and flourishing country and comprises two other provinces. One is Bambara, which contains rivers, woods, sands, and a gold mine, and is occupied by the Sudan, who are still infidels and possess great power. The other, on the west of it, is the Futa, which is inhabited by the Taurud and the Soninke, or foreigners. And what's interesting is that he also made another comment, stating that near to Bambara, there is the province of the Taurud and that of the Fut, which are extensive, inhabited by their own people and by those of Sarankale or Soninke, also called Ajam, meaning alien or foreigner. This region is known today as modern-day Senegal, Gambia, and Mauritania. Now, the Futa Torah was in the north, while the Futa Jalan was in the south, consisted of modern-day Guinea and Sierra Leone. Now, keep this in mind. The tribes that inhabited the Futa Turo and the Futa Jalan region in West Africa back then, their descendants can be seen today in the Tukulur tribe, the Wolof Serer tribe, the Iwan-Biwane Fulanis in Guinea, the Mandingo Soninke tribe, the Balanta tribe, and the Mende tribe. According to the black Muslims in Central Africa and Mali, many Bantu tribes in the Futa regions were still following the Mosaic law as per Hebrew customs and not Islam. This is why they are listed in their books as infidels and foreigners. The Bantu's Israelite slaves multiplied so much while they were in captivity to the Fulani people that they assimilated into the black Arab Tuareg Fulani tribes in West Africa. Now, the Tuareg black Berber Muslims called them Bella, and the Masina Fulani people called them Remebi. Over time, the Fulani tribe and their Israelite Negro slaves assimilated into the North Senegal, South Mauritania region known as the Senegal River Valley or the Futa Turo. After many power struggle wars, many Israelite Mandingos migrated south to the Futa Julan region near Gambia and Guinea. Now, based on this knowledge, can we prove with Bible scriptures and what language that these Israelites Muhammad Bello wrote about were the descendants of the ancient Israelites scattered into Assyria, Babylon, and Africa where brown skin tones dominated? You be the judge.
The king of Assyria did carry away Israel into Assyria, and put them in Hala and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon.
Now Iraq is a country or a land between the two rivers, the Nile and Euphrates River. In biblical times, it was known as Babylon. The country of Iran in biblical times was known as Medes Persia. So if some of the Israelites were exiled into Babylon and Medes Persia, is there a chance that they mixed languages with the people of these lands? Is there a chance that some of these Israelites kept moving east into Central Asia or India, fathering children with foreign women? Is there a chance that some of these Israelites also went into Africa instead of going east? As you will now see, the languages of the Dravidian Indian in South India, the ancient Sumerians, and the Mandingo Soninke people in West Africa seem to have some connection to the land between two rivers in Mesopotamia. Coincidence? I think not. So who are today's descendants of the sons of Shem that lived in ancient Mesopotamia? And here are two lines from the Babylonian Sumerian inscriptions of Shirapak from 2600 BC, which are found in modern-day Tel Farar in Iraq, aka the land of Ur of the Chaldees and the Sumerians. Also included is the Tamil language version from South India of the same Sumerian Babylonian 5,000-year-old inscription. Now keep in mind, around 2600 BC, Shem and his sons were living in modern-day Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Shem is the ancestor of Abraham, the great-grandfather of the children of Israel. And here you will see the Indian Tamil script and its English letter equivalents for pronunciation. Now, if you look closely comparing the two languages of the Semitic Sumerians and the South Indian Tamil people, you can see the similarities. Often, the only difference in the scripts is a letter switch from P to B, or S to C, or E to I, or B to P. Now, this is not a coincidence. Proof? Let's see another example of the Tamil East Indian language in comparison to the Babylonian Shemitic Sumerian language. And here's another sample from the Sumerian Babylonian Kesh temple hymns from around 2200 BC. The hymns are attributed to Enhed Duana, the daughter of Samario, Akkadian king Sargon the Great. Now this very well proves that the dark-skinned Davridian Indian people are the long-lost descendants of the ancient Semitic sons of Shem, Arphaxad, Ashur, Aram, Elam, and Lud. After all, Assyria in ancient times often overlapped the territory of Arphaxad, Ashur, Aram, and Elam. Proving that the original Shemites were a people of brown skin color like the Dravidian Indian also proves that Eber, Peleg, Terah, Abraham, Nahor, Haran, Isaac, Jacob, and the Hebrew Israelites in the Bible could not have been white Arabs or white Jews. What else does it prove? It proves that the original Hebrews, the sons of Eber, were not all Negroid-looking people with tight curled woolly hair, prognathous jaws, and full lips. Why? Because not everyone in South Asia looks identical to Negroes in America.
From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring mine offering.
According to the Bible, in ancient times, the Israelites dwelt in Egypt along the Nile, which is in the land of Ham or modern-day Africa. When the Israelites left Egypt, they were over 1 million strong, leaving as a mixed multitude with Moses and Joshua to the land of Canaan. But prior to the Exodus, many of the Israelite men had already took wives from Cush, which is Nubia, and Egypt. This can be seen in the case of Zipporah, Moses' Cushite wife, and Asenath, Joseph's Egyptian wife. Zipporah would give rise to a Cushite Israelite Levitical priesthood line, while Asenath, the Egyptian, would give rise to the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. In the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3, Zephaniah talks about the glorious day of the Lord when the Gentile nations receive their punishment and the children of Israel are regathered. So where does Zephaniah describe as one of the places of this regathering? From beyond the Nile River in Africa. The Nile River extends south all the way to where Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and the Congo is at, which is prime hotspots for the Bantus Israelites who endured persecution according to the curses of Israel. Now prior to the Bantus Israelites making their way down the Nile River into different parts of Africa, the Israelites spent a lot of time in Egypt and Sudan. This can be proven by researching the oral history of the Bantus, Kikuyu, the Kamba, the Kisi, Aluya, Sukuma, Ewe, Yoruba, and Igbo people, and also the Tutsi Jews. But what caused the Bantus people to leave Egypt and Sudan once they had already escaped captivity in Israel? The rise of Islam with the black Arab invasion into Northeast Africa and the Arab slave trade. Now, can we prove outside of the Bible that the Bantus Negroes lived in Israel during biblical times, eventually finding their way into Africa during the Assyrian siege, the Babylonian siege, and the Roman siege? This can be proven scientifically with archaeology combined with DNA testing. Now, British archaeologists Dorothy Annie Elizabeth Garrett worked on excavations at Mount Carmel in Palestine, demonstrating ancient skeletal fossil remains in the caves of Tabun, El Wad, Shukba, and the Kabar. The Shukba cave was located on the northern bank of Wadi in Natuf, which is located in modern-day Palestinian West Bank territory in Israel. There was no name for the people these skeletal remains belonged to, so they named these people the Natufians, named after Wadi and Natuf. Dorothy Garrett's work would not be in vain. In 2016, a genetic study was done on the migration of a select people from Northeast Africa into Israel, who brought pastoralism and farming. This was dated to BC biblical times. The study was called The Genetic Structure of the World's First Farmers by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories BioRxiv, spearheaded by Dr. Yosef Lazaridis in the Department of Genetics, Harvard University. Data was obtained from Dorothy Garrett's Natufian skeletons found inside the caves in Israel dating back to BC times. Now, these skeletons revealed the presence of the Y DNA of the Allure tribe, the Dogon tribe in Mali, Native American Indians, Australian Aborigines, the Dravidian Indian, the Black Arab Bedouins, the Pacific Islanders, Somalians, the Habesha people in Ethiopia, and the so-called Bantus Negro in Israel. Now, according to Israeli archaeologist Dr. Ofer Bar Yosef, British American biological forensic anthropologist Dr. John Lawrence Angel, and others, the Natufian skeletal finds exhibited Negroid traits, such as Ethiopic and Bushmanoid traits. The skull shape, the nose, the teeth, the prognathism of the jaw, and DNA markers found in the ancient skulls in Israel prove the ancient people living in Israel during biblical times were not a race of white Jews or white Arabs. Now, French bioanthropologist, archaeologist Dr. Fanny Beauquentin, British-American bioanthropologist Dr. John Lawrence Angel, and American biopaleoanthropologist Dr. Charles Loring Brace all revealed in their Natufian research that the sub-Saharan Niger, Congo, Bantus African populations have a clear link to the BC Natufian people in Israel. The Natufian people supposedly brought pastoral living and farming to Israel, not new hunter-gatherer practices. But this account is nothing new when comparing the knowledge to the biblical accounts of the Canaanites and the Israelites.
These men are peaceable with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein. For the land, behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only herein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours?
Now Shechem was the Canaanite city mentioned in the Canaanite Amarna letters to the Egyptian pharaoh after the Exodus, and is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as an Israelite city of the tribe of Manasseh and the first capital of the Kingdom of Israel. Now, geneticist Dr. Peter A. Underhill from Stanford University also admitted in his research that the sub-Saharan genetic lineage is affiliated with the Y-DNA EP2, migrated through Egypt into Israel, the Middle East, and as far north as Turkey, the very place many of the letters or epistles of Paul in our New Testament were sent to. The Y-DNA EP2, according to geneticists, arose in the Horn of Africa, or what some would consider Northeast Africa. The Y-DNA EP2 will give rise to the Y-DNA EM2, aka E1B1A, which is found in the sub-Saharan Negro, and also EM329, which was associated with the Semitic Ethiopians of the Amhara people, the Eritrean people, and the Tigrayan people, or what they will call today the Habesha people. So what does all this DNA stuff really mean? Well, if the DNA of the so-called Bantus Negro is different than that of other ethnicities and tribes in Africa, then who are they? The Bantus people's customs are Hebraic, and their language, as you will see later, is influenced by the Hebrew language and the Egyptian language. Also, their oral history points back to Israel. So if it is scientifically proven that the EP2, the EM2, and the E1B1A Y-DNA originated in Northeast Africa, later appearing in Israel, it proves that the Bantus Negro people are the biblical Hebrew Israelites. Now remember, the children of Israel became a nation of people while they were living for centuries in Egypt and Nubia, which is Northeast Africa. What is even more striking is that the maternal DNA of the Bantus Negro and its downstream branches can be seen all throughout the world in different ethnicities that claim Israelite heritage. Now why is this important? Well, the maternal DNA passed from every mother to child is not influenced by who that woman marries to produce a seed, or if that seed was born out of rape from captivity. This means that no matter where the ancient Israelite women went, no matter if she birthed a child with an Israelite man or a Semitic or Hamitic or Japhetic man, her maternal DNA would track the migration route of the Hebrew tribes. After all, the Hebrew Israelite man, woman, and child were scattered to the four corners of the earth, never to return as a reunited nation until the Messiah is coming. Now the big question everyone wants to know is if the early Hebrews were a people mixed with Hamitic and Shemitic blood. The definition of a people with Hamitic-Shemitic root is called Afro-Asiatic. This excludes the children of Japhet or the white nations of Europe, Asia Minor, and Central Asia. So what if we can prove that the ancient Hebrews such as Terah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were Afro-Asiatic people? Now this will crush the myth or worldwide belief that Abraham, Moses, the children of Israel, and even Jesus Christ were straight-haired, white-skinned people. To prove this, let's start with the Book of Jubilees, which is canon with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews. The Book of Jubilees, known as the Lesser Genesis, was found written in ancient Hebrew in the 2,400-year-old Dead Sea Scrolls found in Qumran, Israel in 1947. When the Book of Jubilees in ancient Hebrew was compared to the Ethiopic Book of Jubilees, it was considered word for word a perfect match. Now in the Book of Jubilees, chapter 8, verses 7 through 9, it reads, "And she bare him a son in the 5th year thereof, and he called his name Eber. And he took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of Nimrod, in the 32nd Jubilee, in the 7th week, in the 3rd year thereof. And in the 6th year thereof she bare him a son, and he called his name Peleg. For in the days when he was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth amongst themselves. For this reason he called his name Peleg, and they divided it secretly amongst themselves, and they told it to Noah." So here we see Eber taking the daughter of Nimrod, a Kishite woman, to be his wife. Knowing that Eber was a descendant of Arphaxad, whose land was ancient Babylon or Samaria, and Azurah was a Nubian Cushite woman, what would this possibly look like today? Now note, Peleg was Abraham's great-great-great-grandfather, and Abraham was the grandfather of Jacob, the father of the children of Israel. From the Hebrew Strong's number 5680, the word Ibri, and the Hebrew Strong's number 5677, Eber, do we get the foundation for the word Hebrew. For example, in the Bible, Abraham recognized that there was, is, and will be but one Elohim, the creator of heaven and earth. Abraham was not caught up in polytheism and pagan worship like his father Terah. Instead, he dedicated his whole life to spreading the knowledge of God. Abraham was known in the Bible as Ha-Ibri, or the Hebrew, which also means the one on the other side, or to cross over. Now, where did Abraham cross over from? Was it the Euphrates Tigris River? In those days, all the world was on one side worshiping pagan gods, and Abraham was alone on the other side worshiping the one true creator of all things, who was called Yahuwah or Yahuwah by the early children of Israel. Now, for those who still have doubt, take this amazing fact into consideration. Joshua, an ancient Israelite from the tribe of Ephraim, quoted from the book of Jasher, a book all European Jews today are familiar with. Now, Joshua was the one that led the children of Israel into the land of Canaan. So if Joshua mentioned the book of Jasher in the Bible, wouldn't it be considered a reliable source of ancient Hebrew history?
And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son. Also he bade them teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher?
So now that you have read this quote from the book of Joshua, now read what is in the book of Jasher. Now in the book of Jasher, in chapter 7, verses 49 to 51, it reads, "And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. And the king and the princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amthelo, the daughter of Cornebo, Cushite priest. And the wife of Terah conceived and bare him a son in those days." So who was the son that was born to Terah and a Cushite woman? Now this son was Abraham. But how can we be so sure Terah's wife was a Cushite Nubian woman? Well, the Bible tells us that the family of Nimrod, the son of Cush, ruled over the land of Ur, which is Babylon and Iraq, when Terah's family called this place home.
And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar.
Now the scriptures say that Terah was 7 years old when he bore Abraham. At those times he was a prince to the king Nimrod, who raised him in those days and dignified him above all the princes that were with him. So let's backtrack again so we can understand the true ethnicity of the forefathers of Jacob and the children of Israel. Now, if Nimrod's Cushite family ruled the land of Ur, of Terah's nativity in the Bible, and if Terah held a high position as prince in the Cushite royal family with Nimrod, we should assume that his wife Amthello, the daughter of priest Cornebo, was most likely of Cushite stock. This Cushite woman, Amthello, and the Hebrew man, Terah, will give birth to Abraham. This will make Abraham an Afro-Asiatic brown-skinned man, not a white-skinned European-looking man like today's white Jews. So is there any archaeological or DNA proof to back this up? Well, there sure is. Now, the maternal DNA of the Bantus West Africans, the Bantus South Africans, Bantus East Africans, including Ethiopians, Ethiopian Jews, Dravidian Indians in South India, and Black Pacific Islanders can all be found to be related to one another. In the Bet Alpha Synagogue in the Bet Alpha Synagogue National Park near Bet Shean, Israel, it shows a mosaic from over 1,500 years ago which depicts Abraham and Sarah with dark brown skin and afros. But don't take my word for it. The 1st century Roman historian Cornelius Tacitus, who lived in the 1st century AD, had these thoughts on the Hebrews. In his literary work, Histories 5.2-5, he writes about the Hebrews. Many again say that they are a race of Ethiopian origin, while other translations read, many assert that the Hebrews are a race of Ethiopian origins. Now, if the early Hebrews were a race of Ethiopian origin, they must have been black to look upon, as the meaning of the word Ethiopian can be linked to the Greek word meaning burnt faces or dark skin tones. Now, these characteristics and skin complexion in ancient times were only attributed to a people living in Africa and all the way across the Arabian Sea to India and Asia. Now, there was a Greek historian named Ephorus who lived during 400 BC who quoted, "The Eastern Ethiopians, for 2 nations of this name served in. The Ethiopians were considered as occupying all the south coast of both Asia and Africa." And he added that this is an ancient opinion of the Greeks. Now, the Greek historian Herodotus, who lived during 490 BC, he quoted that the Eastern Ethiopians, for 2 nations of the same name served in the army, were marshaled with the Indians. They differed in nothing from the other Ethiopians, save in their language and the character of their hair. For the Eastern Ethiopians have straight hair, while they of Libya or Africa are more woolly haired than any other people in the world. Now take this in consideration. As early as the 12th century AD, mention is made of the black Jews in southern India and the native black Semitic people they lived amongst in exile. The Gentile Jewish traveler from Spain, Benjamin of Tudela, speaking of Kolam on the Malabar coast, writes in his itinerary, "Throughout the island, including all the towns thereof, live several thousand Israelites. The inhabitants are all black, and the Jews also." Now, these people later became known as the Black Malabar Jews in Kerala, India, and later the Gentile Sephardic Jews around the time of the 15th century AD would mysteriously find their way to India, where these Sephardic immigrants would be known as the Paradesi white Jews. Now, the descendants of the Black Malabar or Cochin Jews had their DNA analyzed. In a 2009 DNA report confirmed that the Ethiopian Jews of Beta Israel and the Indian Jews of Benai Israel and Cochin have similarities in their DNA. Now, one chronicle in India tells how a group of Jews descended from the Assyrian exile of the 10 northern tribes made their way to Calicut, Kerala by way of Arabia, Yemen. And a Malayalam Jewish song from Kerala, India suggests that the Jews of the ancient town of Pallur may have come from Yemen. It is a known fact that many of the dialects of Malayalam in South India have traces of Assyrian, Aramaic, and Hebrew influences. Now, in regards to the Greeks would classify the black Ethiopians and black Egyptians under the term Ethiops, Nubian, and Niger, simply because these names were associated with dark-skinned people. English archaeologist Sir Godfrey Higgins, who lived in the 1700s, would write the following about the Ethiopians. According to many ancient testimonies, the inhabitants of Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, Western Asia, and India were Ethiopians, therefore Africans. back in that era, there were two lands called Ethiopia, one on the east of the Red Sea and the other on the west of it. And a very great nation of blacks from India did rule almost all over Asia in a very remote era, in fact beyond the reach of history of any of our records. Now Strabo was a Greek historian who lived around 63 BC and he died around 24 AD. Now he spent most of his travels in Kush and in Egypt. Now he stated that the whole of India is traversed by rivers. As for the people of India, those in the south are like the Ethiopians in color, although they are like the rest in respect to the countenance or appearance and also hair. For on account of the humidity of the air does not curl, whereas those in the north are like the Egyptians. Now Arian of Nicomedia, a Greek historian who lived during the 1st century AD, in his literary work Indica, he quoted that the appearance of the inhabitants is also not very different in India and Ethiopia. The southern Indians have rather more like Ethiopians, as they were black to look on, and their hair is black. Only they are not so stub-nosed and woolly-haired as the Ethiopians. The northern Indians are most like the Egyptians physically. So after all this evidence of the mixing of Ham seed with the descendants of Eber, isn't it interesting that Abram's name was later changed to Abraham? The Most High changed Abram's name to Abraham because he was to be the father of a multitude of nations, mainly through the mixing of Ham seed, not Japheth's seed. Nevertheless, by seeing all this with evidence and using critical thinking, we should be able to understand how the children of Israel got their brown skin complexion, something we don't see with the people who came to Israel in 1948 calling themselves Jews.
Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord.
Now Ham had a son named Mizraim, who would be the father of Egypt, or its most ancient name, Kemet, which is an ancient Egyptian word for black. The ancient Egyptians called themselves Kam or Kam-O, which means black people or black god people. Everyone knows by seeing countless pictures of Egyptian drawings that the ancient Egyptians were a race of brown black people. It is also a known fact that the other black nations ruled as the pharaohs of Egypt as well. The black Libyans ruled over Egypt in the 22nd to 23rd dynasties under Shoshenq I, Orsakan II, and Eaput II. This was in the BC era, over 1,000 years before the Muslim Arabs invaded Egypt or Libya. The Nubians of Sudan and Ethiopia, or Kush, also ruled Egypt during the 25th dynasty. Their pictures from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago show them to be black, despite the white Egyptian Arabs who we commonly see today in North Africa. That is a known fact, and when white people visit Egypt today, the locals immediately recognize them as Kawaga, which means foreigners, despite what is portrayed in Hollywood movies. But when African Americans visit Egypt, they are often mistaken for native Egyptians and are referred to as Masri or Mizri, meaning Egyptians in Arabic, which is based off the Hebrew word Mizraim for Egypt. In many cases, African Americans have also been referred to as Ibn Yaqub by the Arab locals when visiting the historical pyramids. Ibn Yaqub basically means son of Jacob in Arabic. So why would the local Arab Egyptians refer to black people as the sons of Jacob or the Egyptians? In the world today, many Christians are realizing that there has been a huge cover-up of real biblical history. Satan knows that if he can hide the true identity of the ancient Egyptians and the sons of Ham, he can keep the real Israelites from waking up to their true identity. So how has this mastermind deception continued for so long? It's easy. The powers to be simply have to present another people to the world to be the Egyptians and the Israelites of the Bible using the mass media or Western education. The mass media for centuries has whitewashed the true black identity of the ancient Egyptians. They know that the head busts, the stone statues, the mummified pharaohs of Egypt, and the pictures on the walls in Egypt depict a different Egyptian than what is shown on TV today. This is why on TV, when our channels report from North Africa, Egypt, Israel, or the Middle East, they always show pictures of white-skinned Arabs. On the movie screen, the Egyptians are just plain white, which is plain wrong. According to biblical history, Abraham's son Ishmael is birthed by a black Egyptian woman named Hagar. In the Bible, she's referred to as Hagar the Egyptian. Hagar later gets a wife for her son Ishmael from black Egypt. Now this would technically make the Ishmaelite Arabs back then and today black. After all, if Abraham was a black-skinned Shemitic man and Hagar was a black-skinned Hamite, their offspring should also be black. This can be proven by the historical writings of the ancient Arabs. Now 7th century AD Arab poet Miskin al-Darimi quoted, "I am Miskin for those who know me, my color is dark, the color of the Arabs." Now Arab linguist Ibn Mandur, who lived around 1260 AD, wrote in his book Lisan al-Arab that, quote, "The predominant complexion of the Arabs is dark brownish black, and that of the non-Arabs is white." Now Ibn Mandur also quoted that non-kinky hair is the kind of hair that most non-Arabs like the Romans and Persians have, while kinky hair is the kind of hair that most Arabs have. So if Ishmael had a black Egyptian mother named Hagar, and he also had an Egyptian wife, the evidence of black Egyptian physical traits should be seen in people with true Egyptian ancestry or true black Arab ancestry. The truth is, the white Arabs and the white European Jews' real biblical identity has been hidden today because the term Semitic has been used to describe them since they currently live in biblical Shemitic lands. However, maternal DNA studies reveal that the true origin of today's Arabs and Jews comes from the many sons and women of Japheth, who dwelt in Central Asia, most notably modern-day southern Russia, Western Russia, aka the Pale Settlements, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. The Seljuk Turks, the Oghuz Turks, the Uzbeks, Kurds, and other Turkish Hunnish groups would eventually over time migrate west to the Middle East and Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. They would adopt Islam as their religion and then conquer North Africa, the Levant, and Jerusalem under the latter name, the Ottoman Turkish Islamic Caliphate. In 1948, the European people of Turkish, Hunnic, Bulgar, Slavic, Khazar, and Germanic descent who converted to Judaism would conquer British Mandate Palestine, otherwise known as Arab Palestine, renaming it Israel. So as you can see, the true ethnicity of Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the Israelites cannot be taught correctly in the church or on TV unless we have a clear understanding of the ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians. This is because the biblical Ishmaelite Arabs were a people heavily mixed with black Egyptian DNA, and the Israelites mixed with the black Egyptians for 400 plus years before they left with Moses to journey to the land of Canaan. In addition, 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel, Ephraim and Manasseh, will come from the stock of a black Egyptian woman named Asenath.
And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
So to erase the false teaching we have gotten for years, we need to see what ancient historians had to say about the skin color or appearance of the ancient Egyptians. Now Herodotus, a Greek historian who lived and spent time in Egypt during 480 BC, made a statement about a group of people called the Colchians who resembled the Egyptians but lived in above the Turkey-Armenia boundaries along the western slope of the Caucasus Mountains near the Black Sea in what is now called the European country Georgia. Now he quoted, "For the fact is I soon came to realize myself, and then heard from others later that the Colchians are obviously Egyptian. When the notion occurred to me, I asked both the Colchians and the Egyptians about it, and found that the Colchians had better recall the Egyptians than the Egyptians did of them. Some Egyptians said that they thought that the cultures originated with Pharaoh's Sesostris army, but I myself guess their Egyptian origin not only because of the Colchians are dark-skinned and curly-haired, but more importantly because Colchians, Egyptians, and the Ethiopians are the only peoples in the world who practice circumcision and who have always done so. Now, Aeschylus, who lived around 520 to 456 BC, was a Greek poet who admitted in his literary work, The Suppliants, that the Egyptians in his time were black. Now, he quoted, "The crews must be Egyptian, for their black limbs stand out clear to the eye against their white tunics." He also quoted that the Egyptians are presented as having a dark complexion. The entire Egyptian army is said to be black by both the Danaans and Danois. When found from his lookout, he distinguishes the Egyptians in their first ship as their black limbs are shown from their white garments. And Aristotle, who lived in the 4th century BCE, a Greek scholar and philosopher, quotes this racist statement about the Egyptians: "Those who are black are cowards like the Egyptians and the Ethiopians." The world is so confused right now that even though we see an agenda to whitenize the Egyptians, when black people or anybody non-white say that they are the Israelites, people say, "Nope, you are a Hamite Egyptian," or "No, you are a Hamite Canaanite." These statements have been attributed to the so-called Negro and the so-called Native American Indian, which are bywords given to these people groups by the European sons of Japheth. Now, was this trickery and confusion prophesied in the Bible?
God shall enlarge Japheth, that he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee.
So what are the cold, hard facts that cannot be disputed? Based on language, passed down traditions, the DNA haplogroup testing of ancient skeletons from Egypt, and what geneticists call matched likelihood index autosomal STR testing scores, the bloodline of the ancient Egyptians is not seen in the so-called Bantus race. In all actuality, the bloodline of the ancient Egyptians can be seen in the Dogon tribe, the Fulani people, the Alur tribe, the Hausa people, the Beja, Afar peoples, and the Somalian tribes in the Horn of Africa. According to Abbasid 9th century Muslim geographer Ahmad al-Yaqubi, the Beja people in ancient times had kingdoms stretching from Aswan in South Egypt to Massawa in Eritrea. Now, some Egyptologists say linguistically the Beja tribe has similarities to the language of the ancient Egyptians, just like certain tribes in Somalia. Their language also falls to the Kush family of languages seen in Sudan and Nubia, which was a part of ancient southern Egypt in BC times. To top this off, German-born 19th century Egyptologist Emily Bruce traced a certain clan of the Beja people to the Egyptian people of the 20th dynasty. Now, American physician and scientist Samuel George Morton proved in the 1844 AD Crania Egyptica study that there was a clear distinction between the Negro and native Egyptians. With craniometry comparison of ancient Egyptian skulls and sub-Saharan Negro skulls from West Africa, Morton proved that the Egyptian ruling elite class of ancient Egypt had a different skull shape than the subservient slave class at the time. Now, whose skull matched up perfectly with the subservient slave class, which in the Bible was the Hebrew Israelites? The sub-Saharan Bantus Negro skull. Now, this proves that the ancient Egyptians and the sub-Saharan Bantus people were two different people. Now, to prove the claim that the Bantus people are not the ancient Egyptians even more, let's examine the article called "Ancient Egyptian Mummy Genome Suggests an Increase in Sub-Saharan African Ancestry in Post-Roman Periods" by paleogeneticist and Professor Verena V.J. Schinnemann at the University of Zurich with her co-partner, archaeogeneticist Professor Dr. Alexander Peltzer from the Institute for the Science of Human History. Now, this article proved that from the New Kingdom Egyptian period around 1388 BC to the Roman period around 1st century AD, the sub-Saharan Bantus people were minimally present in Egypt. Their studies on the ancient Egyptian mummies and more modern Egyptian skeletal remains show that after the Roman period, DNA skeletal evidence proved that the Bantus Negro people brought their gene flow back from outside of Africa or Israel into Egypt. This, of course, was the emigration of the remaining Israelites in Israel into Africa by way of Egypt. The common denominator in the oral history of where many Bantus tribes scattered in Africa claim to have migrated from to get to their current location. Now, if a people claim to be one of the 12 tribes of Israel, then they need to be able to prove this using facts, showing multiple connections to the ancient Israelites, not just the fact that they follow Torah. So we already have autosomal paternal DNA haplogroup markers from ancient Egyptian skeletons and craniometry studies proving that the so-called Negro was not a pure Egyptian. But what we can also use the language from ancient Israel during BC times, oral histories and traditions and customs to prove who was the real Israelites. Many Bantus Negro African tribes, including the early indigenous Indians of the Americas, were found to contain similar DNA markers and language patterns that hinted to a common place of origin. By using the language spoken in Israel prior to the emergence of King Saul, which is, by the way, Egyptian and Hebrew, we could track down the migration routes of the ancient Israelites. Now, this is not hard to believe or accept if we use critical thinking, because after spending 400 years in America, Negroes from West Africa have mastered the English language, forgetting the language of their forefathers. But this erasing of language did not happen with the mixed multitude of people that left with Moses during the Exodus.
And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And the son of an Israelitish woman, whose father was an Egyptian, went out among the children of Israel, and this son of the Israelitish woman and a man of Israel strove together in the camp.
Now, based on these scriptures, wouldn't true Israelites today still have some evidence of the Egyptian and Hebrew language in their dialect today? Wouldn't there be some proof? While investigating the Australian Aborigines in Australia, Professor A.P. Elkin of Sydney University in Australia came up with Aboriginal tribes in Australia displaying Semitic Mediterranean facial features with Egyptian words in their language. Now, the Hebrew Israelites were Semitic and they knew the language of the Egyptians. Now, such proof can be found in the Bible as Joseph was co-ruler over Egypt during his time. Moses was learning the wisdom of the Egyptians, and King Solomon had alliances with the Egyptian pharaohs of Egypt, so much so as he was given the Canaanite city of Gezer as a dowry gift for his marriage with an Egyptian princess. Now, evidence of Hebrew traditions, the Hebrew language, with also an Egyptian influence, can be seen in certain native Indian tribes, but also in the Bantus Ewe tribe, the Bantus Wolof Serer tribe, the Bantus Gadangme tribe, and the Bantus Nigerian Igbo tribe. Now let's get to the facts. In a manuscript written in the Mayan Quiche language, which is today spoken by the Quiche people in Guatemala, in 1554 AD, it tells a story from 3 Mayan Indians. A translator was able to decipher the story. Now, in the story, the Mayans said that they were the descendants of some of the 10 tribes of Israel that were exiled under the Assyrian king Shalmaneser. While in Assyria, they decided to leave and emigrate to a different land. Some were left behind, but some made it. Now, the text read in the Mayan language, "These then were 3 nations of Quiches, and they came from where the sun rises in the east, descendants of Israel, of the same language and the same customs." Now, what is interesting is that the Mayans say that they are the sons of Yaqui, and the Aztecs and Mayans say that when they were forced to leave Israel, or Tulan, they traveled south to the sea and then to the ocean. Now, based off a direct study of the Native American Indians and ancient books such as NEWZ in America, or Probabilities that the Americans are of that race, written in 1650 AD by Thomas Thorogood, many Europeans believe that the Indians were descendants of the Northern Kingdom Israelites who were displaced by the Assyrian king Shalmaneser. Old accounts of stories told by the native Indians describe their people as Israelites who left Israel during the reign of the Israelite king Hosea in the 8th century BC. But this is not the only thing that they describe. Native Indians were known, according to the Jesuits, Sephardic Gentile Jews, the Mormons, and other Europeans, to exhibit the following Hebrew traditions. They performed their camp or people's division into tribes, such as the Israelites. Now, some of the tribes also wrote from right to left, just as in the Hebrew script. They followed 2-3 wheat harvests in 1 year. They didn't swear or take oaths. They didn't drink or commit adultery, and they believed in the Oracle Covenant. They also had an Ark of Bulruth, which was similar to the Ark of the Covenant. The tabernacle was carried by 4 priests only, and they pitched a tent facing the east. And they called their aunts and uncles mother and father, which is seen in West Africa today. And they had cleanliness laws where women on their menses or after childbirth had to be set apart for 7 days, and on the 8th day they were able to come back to the village. They did not eat pork, and as in the Hebrew levirate marriage, the widow had to marry the brother of the deceased husband. Now, circumcision was performed with stone knives, as in the Hebrew culture, and the Indians believed in Hades, or a great pit for sinners, which they call Papgufo. And the Indians wore vestments similar to the Aaronical robes of the high priest, and the first fruits were offered, such as corn, meat, and fish. They observed the year of Jubilee, which is seen in the Hebrew culture, and they uttered the word Hallelujah. The temple was where the Indians worshiped, they sang and prayed and made offerings. And their worship of Yahuwah was known throughout many Indian tribes. Their notions of a theocracy was also seen, and they had a belief in the administration of angels. Their language and dialect showed a Hebrew influence, and they had the same manner of counting time as many of the ancient Hebrews. In the village they had prophets, high priests, and a king hierarchy, and their divination rites were similar to the Aaronical high priesthood. Now the Udo-Aztecan family consists of many different Indian tribes. Semitic linguistic experts in Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew all have agreed that Hebrew and Egyptian can be found in the native Indians' dialect of the Udo-Aztecan speakers. However, the truth is often suppressed of this knowledge to the outside world. Here are some of the tribes in the Udo-Aztecan family who still retain evidence of their Hebrew ancestry in the language. Now let's clear some things up about the Hebrew language seen in different cultures today. Prior to 1948, the Ashkenazi European Jews spoke Yiddish, which is rooted in the Germanic, Slavic, and Turkish languages. Now these 3 languages have their roots in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, which is the land of Japhet, not Shem. Now English, German, Dutch, Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, all have roots to old Germanic languages. Now Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, and Romanian dialects are all based on the Romance language family, which also had its origin in the land of Japhet, such as Western Europe. The Sephardic Jews language, Ladino, is a Romance language derived from Old Spanish. Yiddish and Ladino were never spoken by the ancient Israelites. The native Indian Udo-Aztecan language family for European linguistic experts began in Israel, but was later influenced by non-Semitic tongues, perhaps during their migration settlements in the East on their way to the Americas. They acknowledged that the Udo-Aztecan language began as a Creole language mix, which Semitic was a dominant component. Here we will see the proof. Now, proof about the Urdu as second language having a Hebrew influence can be seen in the work done by linguistic expert Morris Swadesh in his article, Hebrew Influence in Zapotec Language in Southern Mexico. Also, linguistic expert Arnold Leesburg in his article, Hebrew and Quechua, the Inca language of Peru, are alike in many ways. Also, the Nahuatl Aztec language has many similarities to the Egyptian language if you drop the L, according to Francis Cartoonin, an analytical dictionary of Nahuatl. The Europeans documented that when the Indians talked about their ancestors, it was basically what the Europeans read about the Israelites in the Bible. The Europeans said that the Indians did talk about a great prince that a long time ago brought them in a fleet to the Americas. The Indians described that God made one man and one woman, commanding them to live together and multiply, and how in a famine he rained bread for them from heaven. They also said that during a time of drought and thirst, that God gave them water out of a rock. The Taino Indians of South America and the Caribbean are known to have Hebrewisms in their language and culture. Now, Chief Joseph Amahura Riverwind of Arawak Taino descent described an ancient Taino song to Breaking Israel News as Shema, Shema, Naina, Papaska, Hoya, Ya. It is translated into English as Listen, listen, people, as you gather together, we will dance before the Creator. Now, this is eerily similar to the Hebrew Shema prayer, Shema, Yisrael, Yahuwah, Eloheinu, Yahuwah, Akkad, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Now, for the Taino Arawak people, the name of the supreme God or Great Spirit is Yahya. Now, the Cherokee Indians, who were found to have the maternal DNA haplogroup T specific to ancient Egypt, called themselves the Ani Ketu Waya and called the Creator Yohiwa. Now, the Cherokee were also known to carry an ark into battle, celebrate 7 feast holidays, they had cities of refuge, abstinence from eating pork, and they held the number 4 and 7 sacred, possibly secondary to the fact that they kept the 7th day of rest, which is seen in the Hebrew Israelite culture. Now, the Chippewa Indians called themselves Anish Nabi and believed they were from the tribe of Ephraim. In Hebrew, Anshe Nabi means people of the prophet, as the word Nabi means prophet, and Anshi can also mean people of, as in the word Anshi Chesed, which means people of benevolence or people of kindness and mercy. Now note in 1 Chronicles chapter 6, a Levite man, Elkanah, was the father of Samuel, the prophet, who lived in the mountains of Ephraim. So with all this proof, let us turn now to the Bantus Negro people in regards to their Hebrew and Egyptian influences in their language. Ancient stories of different Bantus tribes all tell of a time when they lived in the Congo. The Congo today is known for its rainforest, but in the late 1800s, over 10 million Bantus Hebrew Israelites were killed under the rule of Belgian King Leopold II. African historical documents state that in the ancient past, the Congo was home to a large Hebrew Israelite kingdom. But some legends even state that King Solomon, the Israelites, and seamen from the Canaanite city Tyre came to the Congo looking for precious metals, animals, and spices. Even today, there has been reports of ancient Hebrew being found written on the rocks deep within the forest. Many Bantus tribes such as the Bakongo, the Luya, the Bamaleke, Sakuma, Baganda, Temne, Kikuyu, Zulu, Exosa, Ashanti, Ewe, Yoruba, Igbo, and others claim to have migrated from Israel south into Africa by way of Egypt. The word Sukuma means people of the north, and the Luya word Abaluya means people of the north. So why would so many Bantus tribes connect their initial migration point into Africa from Egypt? Even Bantu speakers from Mozambique, the Congo, Zambia, and Malawi all testify to a southerly migration from Egypt. So what if these Bantu tribes have Hebrew and also have evidence of the ancient Egyptian language in their mother tongue? This combination can only mean that the Bantu people are the true Israelites of the Bible. No other group of people on the planet Earth can attest to this finding in language, not even those today who the world says are Jews. So we know that brown skin tones was something that was natural to the sons of Ham in Africa and the sons of Shem in Mesopotamia and Arabia. But what if we could show evidence of the Hebrew language and the Egyptian language in different African Bantu tribes whose ancient history points back to them being the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible? This kind of proof validates the Bantu people's long history in Egypt as Hebrews in their exodus with Moses and Joshua to Israel. Is the world ready to finally find out who are the real children of Israel? This is an exciting time we're living in to know that the Most High is waking up his people all across the world to their true Israelite identity. Now this calls for some celebration music as we soak in all this truth. we have covered Egypt, there is one missing link that has been overlooked by biblical and Jewish scholars. The link that proves that the Bantu's Negro people are the original Hebrew Israelites. So what is this link? First, we must ask the question that no one has bothered to ask. Where are the children of Canaan today that mixed with the Israelites in BC times?
And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, Hittites, and Amorites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites. And they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods. The people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands, doing according to their abominations, even of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons.
Now, African American Negroes have spent 400 years in America. But despite race mixing with different ethnicities, we still look black and not Caucasian. So if Abraham and the 12 sons of Jacob were already a brown-skinned people before entering the land of Ham, which is Africa, then mixing with the black Canaanites or black Egyptians for over 1,500 years, they would naturally produce further generations of Negroid-looking Hebrew Israelites. Before we come to this conclusion, we must first prove that the Canaanites back then and today were people with Negroid features. In Africa, there are a group of people who have been said to have been one of the original inhabitants of Africa, a people who are known by other ethnicities to have traveled to distant lands, even before others could lay their stake first. They are called the Little Black People, aka the Black Pygmy Negrito race. The Moors documented that little dwarfs lived in Morocco and all through the Atlas Mountains in North Africa, even into the south. They were called by many names: the Dinga, the Tiki, the Aka people, which was a Phoenician Canaanite city in BC times, the Jedi people, the Tawuta, and the Saisiyat black little people in Taiwan, the Koro Poguru black little people by the Ainu people in North Japan, the Nunihi or Yunwi Tsudi little people by the Cherokee Indians. Now if we look deep into the ancient history of the black pygmy people, we will see that they could very well be the same children of Canaan that our Bible speaks of. One of the biggest things the Canaanites are well known for in the Bible is the infamous curse of Canaan.
And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren.
In the Hebrew Old Testament, the word used for brethren is Hebrew Strong's word 251, ak, which means brother or brothers. Now because of this one passage in the Bible and because of the transatlantic slave trade, it has been fought and taught that the so-called Bantu's Negro are the biblical Canaanites. But who were the brothers of Canaan? The black Egyptians, the black Cushites of Nubia, and the black North African Hamitic tribes from the lineage of Put in the territory of Libya. So do we have proof that Canaan's brothers were black? So what about their other brother Put, who lived in modern-day Libya? 1st century AD, Roman commander Silius Italicus described the black Libyan Berbers with the term Negra, which meant black. Now, this was 600 years before Islam existed or any black Muslim war existed. In 6th century AD, Roman poet Flavius Chrysonius Corippus uses the phrase facies negroque, colorist, meaning faces or appearance of black color, to describe the North African Libyan Puttite Berbers in his literary work Johannes. For centuries, the curse of Canaan story has been taught incorrectly by the European Catholic Church and modern Talmudic Judaism, which many black people have believed even until today. The question is, why would Catholics and Jews teach that black people are suffering from the curse of Canaan? Truth is, the Bantu people in Africa were naturally practicing Hebraic customs without even knowing the English word Hebrew, Jew, or Judaism. In addition, the oral history of their migration from Egypt to Israel and from Israel back into Africa by way of Egypt from Sudan was passed down from the oldest person in the village going back generations upon generations. Now, does this sound like the biblical history of the Canaanites? Of course not. In real history, not too much evidence is found in regards to the identity and current whereabouts of the children of Canaan. This information has been covered up for a reason. But as Yeshua HaMashiach, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ, said in Luke 8:17, "For nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, and nothing concealed that will not be made known and brought to light." Now, with that being known, the Pygmy tribes in Africa are a group of people who were once very numerous in the land of Ham until the Bantus, Negro, Israelite expansion into Africa. The Pygmy tribes in Africa have always been overshadowed and ruled over by the other great Hamite kingdoms of Africa. This includes the Libyan Put Empire, the Egyptian Mizraim Empire, the Nubian Kush kingdoms that ruled over ancient Egypt, and Northeast Africa. So the Bantus people are not Hamites, and the Pygmy tribes in Africa are not accounted for in African Hamite history. Then who are they? The only people they could possibly be are the children of Canaan. Now here's where it gets interesting. Pygmy tribes like the Batwa or Twa Pygmies in Africa were found to have the same Egyptian Canaanite Pygmy Bes god in their pantheon of pagan gods. They also knew of the Pygmy Egyptian Phoenician Canaanite god Ptah Sokar, aka Pataikos. Coincidence? In the FA Pygmy language, the word Ilani or Ela corresponds to energy, force, power, or strength. The ancient Hebrew word El, meaning God, corresponds to strength and power. It consists of the Aleph, Ox, and Lamed shepherd staff, pictographed Hebrew letters similar to the Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian word Elu or Il for God. In the first dynasty around 3150 BC, Pygmies served and worked directly for the pharaoh, including the royal household of the Egyptians. Now, were these Pygmy people Caucasoid? Of course not, because there are no indigenous Caucasian tribes in Africa today. Now, many Pygmy skeletons were found buried in lesser tombs around that of the tombs of the pharaohs. In fact, a proportion of dwarfs in the Egyptian royal cemetery of the first dynasty kings such as Djer, Hor, Aha, or Narmer were so numerous that many believed that the Pygmies were brought into Egypt from the land of Canaan. Back then, the Pygmies' purpose in the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom would be seen as a form of servitude to the Egyptian, Libyan, and Nubian Kushite kings, just like the Curse of Canaan states. According to Egyptian history, the black Pygmies of Africa were brought into Egypt as jewelers, tailors, cupbearers, zookeepers, fortune tellers, astrologers, and entertainers. Egyptian texts from around 2300 BC refer to the Pygmies as little men from the land of trees and spirits at the foot of the mountains of the moon. In Central Africa and the African Great Lakes region, the Batwa Pygmies are regarded as the ancient dwellers of the forest. They are also known as the keepers of the forest who dwell near the mountains. In ancient biblical times, Egyptian King Pepi II Neferkari, around 2200 BC, sent an expedition into Central Africa, the same place that many Pygmy tribes still dwell today, such as the Congo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Zaire, and returned with a dancing dwarf known as Akka. Now, in the pyramid text during the 6th Egyptian dynasty ruler Pepi I, it was declared that, quote, "He who is between the thighs of Nut is the Pygmy who danceth like the god and who pleaseth the heart of the god before his great throne." Now, the black Pygmies used in ancient Egypt were often used to dance for special occasions and religious festivals. Their god, Bes, was a dwarf god and was known for good things like fighting off evil spirits or fertility, so he was always associated with music, dancing, and sexual pleasure. Today, the Pygmy people in Africa still enjoy dancing as they are a happy people who are not governed by any specific laws like the Hebrew Mosaic law, the Roman law, or the Arab Sharia law. By the New Kingdom period, from 1550 BC to 1070 BC, they would appear in Egyptian writings as a people of ridicule and abuse. In the Bible, the Pharaoh of Egypt gave King Solomon the Canaanite city of Gezer as a dowry gift for his daughter's hand in marriage. In the Amarna letters, the Canaanites sent distress letters to the Egyptian rulers for help against the chief of the Hebrew, which many believe was Joshua.
Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof. As the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you.
Now, many Spanish historians say that the word España, meaning Spain in Spanish, comes directly from the hidden word Sephanim, Sephania, or Sephania, which is a Phoenician Canaanite word which means land of the rabbits. Now, they say that the black Pygmy Twa people were the first people who named the land of Spain Sephanim or Sephania. Now, here's where it gets deep. The Hyrax coney rabbit-like animal in Hebrew is called Shapan, or Shapanim, aka rock rabbit. It is only seen in Africa and Israel. Now, more than half of the world's rabbits and hares are seen in southwestern Europe, such as Spain and North America. Rabbits are different but very similar in appearance to the Hyrax seen in ancient Canaan or Israel. One can see the obvious differences by looking at the ears. Now, if the Twa Pygmies named Spain as Sephanim, Sephania, or Sphania, the only way they could have known to call Spain this Hebrew term would be by associating it with the Hebrew word for a rabbit-like animal familiar to their ancestors' word for a Hyrax coney in their ancient language, the Phoenician script, which is identical to ancient Hebrew. The root word of Isephanim or Sephania is the Hebrew Strong's word 8227a, Shapan, Shapanim, or Shepanim. Now, this proves that the Twa Pygmies living in southwestern Europe were speaking a language very close to Paleo-Hebrew, although they were not Hebrews. This is the ancient Canaanite language Phoenician. But wait, there's more. Now, according to ancient historians like Tacitus, Pliny, and Claudian, the Pygmies were the first people encountered by whites in the British Isles and Scotland. Now, these small black Pygmies who were experts in alchemy, fortune-telling, astrology, and good fortune would spark the leprechaun myth in Ireland and Scotland. Now, the Abattoir Pygmies, or Twa Pygmies, call very tall people NEWZ, or Langwani. In their ancient Malawian tales, the Abattoir Pygmies speak of a time when their people were numerous throughout the land of Ham, or Africa, and how giants who were the first offsprings of winged spirits had sexual relations with the people living in Africa. The Mulanje Mountains and its forest reserves are believed to be the first home of the Abattoir people. Ironically, Egyptian texts from around 2300 BC referred to the Pygmies as little men from the land of trees and spirits at the foot of the mountains of the moon, and it just so happens that most Pygmy tribes across the world live near mountains and in dense forests. In Pygmy mythology, there is an account of a Garden of Eden, or a story similar to it, as well as a creator and immortal savior like Christ. There is even a flood story amongst the Pygmy tribes. So did the Pygmies learn about the messianic prophecy of Christ from the Hebrew Israelites living in Canaan? Did they know about Joshua and Moses? Now consider these amazing facts. In the Pygmy creation story, God makes man modeled from the dirt of the earth. God breathes life into man, and he becomes alive, and it's called Efe. It's the same name as the Efe Pygmy tribes in the Congo. So God told Efe to have children, and he gave Efe seed dominion over everything on earth. Mankind did not have to work at this time and was immortal. The only thing God forbade them to do was to stay away and not eat from the tahu tree. This was the first law that God commanded mankind not to do. Now Efe, his wife, and children obeyed this law. And after some time, Efe had ancestors who populated the earth. Now one day, a pregnant woman convinced her husband to eat of the fruit of the tahu tree. The Pygmy man didn't want to eat from the tree, but the woman said it was a silly old law. The two argued about it, and eventually the man gave in. Soon the man and the pregnant woman gave all the Pygmy people in the forest some fruit from the tahu tree. They all thought that God would never find out what they had done, but he did. After God found out what they had done, man lost his immortality and was able to get sick and die. The woman was punished with pain in childbirth, and mankind was made to work the earth until death from that day on. And the Pygmy tribes were also aware of the giving of commandments to the Bantus people by God and the second coming of what they call the Pygmy Messiah. Now the Hadza or Hadza people of Tanzania are people who carry the same Y DNA haplogroup B as the Pygmies do, and to a lesser degree the Y DNA E1V1A, which is seen in the Bantus Negro people. They are of short stature, just like the Pygmy people. And some also have an Asian look to their outer facial appearance, just like the Khoisan Bushman people. Now, according to the Hazda people, Ishoye, the creator, caused a great flood that was sent to kill the evil, wicked people of the earth, including the giants. The Hazda people also claim in their mythology that there was a Bantus, a Zanzu man, similar to Joshua the Israelite, who defeated the giants in the land of their people. And this falls in line with the Hebrew Israelites coming into the land of Canaan and being told by God to wipe out the giants, including the Canaanites, in the book of Exodus, chapter 33, verse 2. Now, the maternal DNA marker labeled 9BP deletion is seen in all the African pygmies. It can also be seen in the Lemur Jews, the Remba, Venda, Shona people, Central African Bantus tribes, East African Bantus tribes, South African Bantus tribes, Native American Indians, select tribes in India, in Papua New Guinea, in the Philippines, in Polynesia, and parts of Asia, extending all the way up from Taiwan to Japan. Their African maternal DNA LOA and out of African maternal DNA haplogroups B, E, and F can be seen in Polynesia, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Asia. Now, the Lemur Jews who lived mostly in South Africa told their ancestry as Israelites who left Israel during the Babylonian invasion. They migrated into Arabia and further south into Yemen. From Yemen, they crossed over the Gulf of Aden into Ethiopia and later migrated into South Africa. However, the Lemur Jews carry the same maternal DNA markers seen in the different Pygmy tribes scattered in Africa. The problem is, the Lemur Jews do not openly confess to intermarrying with Pygmy women. So where do the Lemur Jews pick up this DNA marker carried by the Pygmy people? And where do they pick up the Negro-specific paternal DNA E1B1A? It has to be in the land of Canaan or Israel. In the book Totemism and Exogamy by James George Fraser, he states that in Sir Harry Johnson's venture into the Congo and Uganda, he documented that all the Congo pygmies were circumcised, and both male and female sexes had their teeth filed or sharpened to a point. Now, the Canaanites will also learn to practice circumcision on their babies and men, as noted in the biblical story, the slaughter of the men of Shechem, in Genesis chapter 34. Now, Shechem was a Canaanite prince who had sex with Jacob's only daughter Dinah.
Because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this will we consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Then will we give our daughter unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people.
Now, the Israelite E1B1A Y-DNA haplogroup and the L2 maternal DNA haplogroup, seen mostly in African American Negroes, today can also be seen in some pygmies in Africa. Now, this proves that the Pygmy tribes have a long history of mixing with their Israelite neighbors, just as the Bible tells us. Now, here's where it gets even deeper. The Abattoir or Twa pygmies write their letter M, pronunciation like a wave of water. It symbolized water for them because in ancient times they had a shrine altar to the rain gods on the Mulanje mountain in Malawi. In ancient Paleo-Hebrew, the letter Mem is drawn like a wave of water as it represents the M pronunciation and was a symbol for water. Coincidence? The Malawi Abattoir pygmies also wrote for their pronunciation of Ka, which is the letter K or Kaf in modern Hebrew, resembling the picture of a bowl, with the meaning cup hand for making Nsembi offerings. Back then in ancient times, the Abattoir Twa pygmies offered up their offerings using their hands open, facing up, just like the Paleo-Hebrew Phoenician Canaanite pictograph Kaf. Now, the letter T, or the character associated with the T sound, was drawn by the Abattoir pygmies as a sort of X, which was the language of the Twa Abattoir Sapitwa priesthood. It is not a coincidence that the way that the Abattoir pygmy priests wrote the letter T pronunciation was the same way that ancient Canaanites and ancient Hebrews wrote their letter T. Now, with all this information, again, using critical thinking, we can conclude that the Pygmy tribes in Africa are in fact the biblical Canaanites from Ham's lineage. Therefore, proving even more with our knowledge of the Bible that the children of Israel, including Christ in biblical times, could not have been Caucasian-looking people after mixing with the black sons of Ham for thousands of years. Now, this leads us to a bigger piece of the puzzle, a final puzzle piece that will help the world understand who were then and still are today the chosen people of Yahuwah, the real bloodline descendants of the children of Israel.
Wars, 1, 2, pestilence, earthquakes, and then famines. 3, deceivers who claim to follow Christ. That's Matthew 24, 4 and 5. False prophets, false Christ. Number 4, shout for the people of Israel shall return to the land. That's in Ezekiel 37, verse 21 and 22. Thus saith the Lord God, surely I will take the children of Israel from among the nations, whatsoever they have gone.
The time is now for the so-called Negroes in America to wake up to their true Israelite identity. The Most High is calling His chosen people to come out of Babylon and a system of deception. Will you be the one that has ears to hear and makes the right choice?
It's a funny thing, Mary. Once someone offers you a choice, you can't ever go back to the way it was before. If you don't try, when you go out of here, you'll find your pride has shrunk to 10 inches. If you do try, well, if you do try, you may have something to be really proud of. What do you say?
All right. I'll try.
Good girl.
So here we are today in the 21st century, and we are seeing a mass movement where black people in America are seeking out their identity. From paying attention to social media trends, I believe most people today would say that the common consensus is that black people are finding out that their identity is not defined by the word black, Negro, or African American, but with the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible. But as we all know, because of years of being taught incorrectly in church that we are the Gentiles, when the Most High reveals the truth to His people, we have a choice to either accept it or reject it. Either way, the truth doesn't change. So why is this awakening happening globally? If you look to the scriptures, we can see why this awakening is now happening.
The hand of the Lord was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the midst of the valley which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Lord God, thou knowest. Again he said unto me, Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied there was a noise, and behold a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone. And when I beheld, lo, the sinews and the flesh came up upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Then said he unto me, Prophesy unto the wind. Prophesy, Son of man, and say to the wind, Thus saith the Lord God, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. And ye shall know that I am the Lord, when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves, and shall put my spirit in you, and ye shall live, and I shall place you in your own land. Then shall ye know that I, the Lord, have spoken it, and performed it, saith the Lord. The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, and write upon it, For Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick, and write upon it, For Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions. And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand.
To fully understand the biblical component of this awakening of Negroes to their true Israelite identity, we have to go back to the past.
So the plantation system, in a smaller and modified way, continued and can be found in the South today. Much of the work is still done by hand. Much of the wealth still comes from one crop, cotton. Most of the workers are Negroes who live on the plantation. Today, the man who owns the plantation is called the landlord. The men who work the farm are tenants. And so the landlord, the laborers, and the land are still the important parts of the plantation system. Today, this owner has less land than the plantation owner of the past, and he lives in a house that is less pretentious than the great mansions of earlier times. The tenant farmers and their families live on the plantation. Each family has a small house which they rent together with a section of land.
After Abraham freed the slaves on January 1st, 1863, many Negroes in America were hopeful that things would change. Sharecropping was just another form of slavery by another name. In the 1900s, we thought that segregation was bad and integration was good for us. But here we are in the 21st century, and things seem to have been better when we had our own communities like Black Wall Street, when we were forced to work with each other. For many black people in America who are waking up, we now know that all of our struggles in America has been because of the curses of Israel. But just like Malcolm X said, there are still many of us who are asleep Negroes, and there are many of us who are trapped with the mentality of the house Negro. Just see for yourself.
This is Harlem. Harlem has always had the reputation of being a place of music, gaiety, and excitement. But to us, it has another meaning. Here, only Negroes live. How did this come about? The Negro was brought from Africa to be sold into slavery. A century ago, slavery was abolished, but a pattern of segregation took its place. Although there have been significant changes, we are still deprived in many instances of full rights and opportunities. For example, there are hospitals in which the surgeons we saw earlier are not allowed to practice. And in some states, we are still restricted by signs like these. Later in this film, we shall see some of the ways in which the situation is changing. But first, let us ask a cross-section of Negroes how segregation affects their lives.
Segregation to the average Negro means being held back. He's looking for progress. He wants to move forward in the American mainstream. Segregation
I think it's something that's ridiculous. You take the white people in the South that, or not only in the South, anywhere, that refuses to allow a Negro man or a Negro woman to sit in a restaurant or to ride next to them in a bus or a train or anything, and then on the other hand turns around and wants a colored woman to come into their home and cook their food and serve them their dinner, after having our hands all in their food, I think somebody's got to be crazy there.
Up to this present time, it hasn't affected me at all. As far as my work and my social activities, up until this present time, I can't say it hasn't affected me.
In order to understand how any Negro feels under segregation, you have to realize that from the time of infancy, he has it pounded into him that he is not as good as other people. There are things he cannot do. Don't do this, you can't do this, you can't do the other. It builds into a man a feeling of inferiority, a feeling of frustration, a feeling of resentment.
So much bitterness built up in a person and resentment when you know that you're being segregated against simply because you're black and there's nothing that you can do about it. There is something you're trying to do about it.
These students are typical of many throughout the country, both Negro and white, who have been effective in breaking the barriers of segregation. Sense the confidence and dedication of these young people as they discuss their plans.
Talking about was the possibility of spending your Christmas in jail. I think the most beautiful thing that we could do would be to stage a mass sit-in or some type of demonstration. And if they did not serve us, to remain until they served us. If arrested, to go in jail and refuse bail. That's what I think will have a much larger impact than just mere arrest. I'd like to hear your comments on it and see exactly what you think and how you feel about it. Charlie?
We've been getting public sympathy, but not enough by just going in and coming out. And if we decide to spend Christmas in jail, then I'll go. That's all.
How many people would actually feel committed enough right now that if it came to this, they would spend their time in jail over the Christmas holidays?
Through the years, Negroes have always protested against segregation. But what you see here is an example of a new spirit.
Nightmares are not the sole property of Southern sleepers. This is Brooklyn, New York, where headlines tell of repeated incidents of police brutality.
Perhaps I'm not the right person to talk about this case, but I feel it so deeply and so closely that I'll not rest until somebody pays for the death of Al Garrett, were he my brother. I'm angry about a number of things. Not only about Edward Silver, the district attorney of this county, who has thus far failed to arrest the policeman who shot him to death, but I'm angry with a lot of my Negro brethren who don't even get angry about the fact that a poor man lies dead in his grave tonight.
Attorney Thomas Russell Jones deplores the slaying.
He was killed as a result of a policeman's bullet fired at him while he was in custody in the 79th Precinct on Gates Avenue. This man who had not even committed any crime, he failed to put a bottle or trash in a can. And this trigger-happy cop took him in, marched him into the police station. And there's some testimony that Al Garrett was being marched to the police station. He suddenly put up his hands and said, "Oh, you're not going to do that to me," and marched holding his hands all the way to the precinct. Anybody who's been a Negro for long knows what that means. Any man here in this room knows what you do, why you do a thing like that.
Throughout history, European powers have invaded and conquered vast lands, from the north to the south and from the east to the west. But the biggest effects of European Japhetic invasion has been by far in the Americas, the Caribbean, and Africa. But who were the people living in these lands before the sons of Japheth arrived? Where did this history go? This is where westernized European history draws a blank for us. Now, George Orwell, the author of the book 1984, quoted that whoever controls history controls the world. Now, despite his story or history that we have been told in Western education, black people are slowly waking up and are asking questions. We no longer believe that Jesus and the Israelites were European-looking people. We are no longer falling for the curse of Canaan, aka Noah's curse, when it comes to our biblical identity.
The Negro is inferior by nature because of Noah's curse. And so one brother during the days of slavery wanted to justify slavery, and he had set his argument up on the framework of Aristotle's thinking. He could say, now, all men are made in the image of God, And then came his minor premise, God, as everybody knows, is not a Negro, therefore the Negro is not a man. They argue now on more cultural and subtle sociological grounds. The Negro is not culturally ready for integration. And if you integrate schools and if you integrate too much, the Negro will pull the white race back a generation. And then they go on to say, you know, that the Negro is inherently criminal and all of these things. Now, these people never say to us that many of these problems are problems of urban dislocation, and that poverty, ignorance, and disease, greed, crime, whatever the racial group may be, that these conditions are environmental and not racial. And it is a torturous logic to use the tragic results of segregation and discrimination as an argument for the continuation of it. But I submit to you this evening that this way of nonviolence will help us not to seek to rise from a position of disadvantage to one of advantage, thus subverting justice. We will not substitute one tyranny for another, for black supremacy is as dangerous as white supremacy. The time to do right is now, and that the time is always.
By now, many African Americans and the descendants of slaves scattered across the world have realized that to truly understand why all this hardship is taking place is to look to the Bible for answers. For many of us, the Most High has turned on the light bulb, revealing our answers through Deuteronomy 28 and the curses of Israel. As much as we may not want to believe it, we cannot run away from our true identity and the covenant our ancestral forefathers broke with the Most High. Such as the question as, what is the biblical identity of the so-called Negro in America? And why do we have to lose our culture and heritage after leaving Africa? No matter what country we live in, why is it so hard for the so-called Negro to be prosperous as a people? And why are we struggling economically? And why are we the last ones hired on the job, the only ones discriminated against on the job, and the first people fired? Why are we struggling academically? And why are we afflicted with so many diseases and mental behavioral disorders? And why is there so much conflict in our homes? And why is there an agenda to imprison all of us? And why do we kill each other? And why is there so much stress at home seen in black relationships and so many single black mothers? And why has the Negro been a slave in just about every country on earth? And why have we been casted to servitude status in the nations we were brought to in slavery? And why are we the object of ridicule all over the world? And why are the nations living their best life, but our lives seem to be a lifelong struggle? And why have we been praying to the same Jesus as everyone else who is Christian in the world, but still as a people we experience so much hardship in our everyday lives? Decade after decade, we have been reminded by Hollywood of our ancestors' history of slavery, but what is the real truth about the slave trades? In school, we are never taught about the Catholic Church's papal bulls authorizing the enslavement of the Negro and the Indian. We were never taught about the Arab, East African, Islamic slave trade, or the Jewish slave ships that brought our West African Negro Bantu's ancestors to slave ports owned by the Jewish Newport World Center of Slave Commerce off the east coast of North America. And little do we know that the three Abrahamic religions that shaped the world were the very same religions that enslaved the so-called Negro. Perhaps this is the reason why the true Israelite identity of the so-called Negro has been covered up for so long. The mass media is the biggest tool of indoctrination, brainwashing, and propaganda that the world has seen. For centuries, it has been helping Satan deceive the world, including the Christian church. Don't believe me? The following quote was made by Ashkenazi Jew Harold Wallace Rosenthal back in 1976. The truth will shock you. At first, by controlling the banking system, we were able to control corporation capital. Through this, we acquired total monopoly of the movie industry, the radio networks, and the newly developing television media. The printing industry, newspapers, periodicals, and technical journals have already fallen into our hands. The richest plum was later to come when we took over the publication of all school materials. Through these vehicles, we could mold public opinion to suit our own purposes. There is no such thing as a silent majority because we control their cry and hue. The only thing that exists is an unthinking majority, and unthinking they will remain, as long as their escape from our rigorous service is the opiate of our entertainment industry. By controlling industry, we have become the taskmasters and the people the slaves. When the pressure of daily toil builds to an explosive degree, we have provided the safety valve of momentary pleasure. The television and movie industries furnish the necessary temporary distraction. These programs are carefully designed to appeal to the sensuous emotions, never to the logical thinking mind. Because of this, the people are programmed to respond according to our dictates, not according to reason. Silent they never are, thinking they will remain. We are amazed at the Christian stupidity. Judaism is not only the teaching of the synagogue, but also the doctrine of every Christian church in America. Through our propaganda, the church has become our most avid supporter. This has given us a special place in society. They're believing the lie that we are the chosen people and they, the Gentiles. Said by Ashkenazi Jew Harold Wallace Rosenthal in The Hidden Tyranny of 1976, The Silent Majority. Over the centuries, Bible historians and Jewish rabbis have all tried to find the whereabouts of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Studies have been conducted in China with the Kaifeng Jews, in Afghanistan with the Pashtun Jews, and in India with the Cochin Jews. Studies have also been made in Africa with the Ethiopian Jews, the Lemba Jews, and the Tutsi Jews. But no attention is given to the area on ancient maps known as the Sudan or Negro land. Today we will cover this topic as it is needed to truly understand end times biblical prophecy. In the last days, the persecution of the Israelites will be greater than it was in ancient times. Moreover, during this time, the seed of Esau, Cain, Gog and Magog, will seek to completely destroy the children of Israel. Now, it is widely accepted that the Greeks, under their leader Alexander the Great, conquered Egypt, Israel, and the territories once held by the Persians around the year 334 BC. This would arise the beginning of Hellenistic Judaism and the Gentiles' insertion into Israelite Jewish history. So the earliest reference to a Greek Jew is an inscription dated around 250 BC, found in Oropos, a small coastal town between Athens and Boeotia in Greece, which refers to Moschos, son of Moskion the Jew. Today, the descendants of the Greek Jews are called the Romanite Maccabean descent Jews. And the Romanites are Greek Jews, supposedly distinct from both the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. However, the Romanite oral tradition states that their people, aka the Gentile Jews, arrived in Ionia shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD. So who are these Romanite Jews really? Who are the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews? And what does their DNA have to say about it? The paternal DNA of the Romanite Jews shows the Y DNA haplogroup E1B1B, which is a marker of Edomite influence in the land of Israel, and also the Y DNA haplogroup G, which is a marker of Greek influence in the land of Israel. Now, this supports the fact that hundreds of thousands of Greek Jews and Edomite Jews did in fact flee to Mediterranean Europe and North Africa during the Roman takeover of Jerusalem. Now, current Jewish history states that the Sephardic Jews fled Israel after the fall of the Second Temple of Jerusalem, eventually finding their way into North Africa and Iberia, where they would be known as Spanish Jews prior to the Spanish Inquisition. They claim to be real Jews, but is this the truth according to their DNA? Now, genetic studies have proven that European maternal haplogroups H, HV, K, U, T, and R are seen widely throughout Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and parts of Western Asia. Now, these are the same maternal haplogroups that are seen in Ashkenazi and Sephardic women and men passed down from their mothers. Even after this DNA proof, there is still more. As far back as the 4th century BC, even after during the time of Christ, the Edomites and Greeks ruled the land of Judea. Once they gave up their pagan gods, underwent circumcision, and started following the Torah, they were then known by their new identity as Jews, even after the Romans took the land of Israel under full control around 70 AD. Here, the Gentile Jewish historian Josephus Flavius confirms the Edomite occupation of southern Judea. That country is also called Judea, and the people Jews. And this name is given to as many as embrace their religion, though of other nations. But then upon what foundation so good a governor as Maccabean John Hyrcanus took upon himself to compel these Idumeans either to become Jews or to leave their country deserves great consideration. I suppose it was because they had long ago been driven out of the land of Edom and had seized on and possessed the tribe of Simeon, their land, in the southern part of the tribe of Judah, which was the peculiar inheritance of the worshippers of the true God without idolatry. So the Jews today know this? In the Jewish Encyclopedia 1925 edition, volume 5, it states Edom is in modern Jewry. And under the heading of a brief history of the terms for Jew in the 1980 Jewish Almanac is the following words. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. In the Encyclopedia Judaica 1971, volume 10, it states, the Jews began to call themselves Hebrews and Israelites in 1860. And in the Jewish Encyclopedia 1903, it says under the heading Edom, they were then incorporated with the Jewish nation and the country was called by the Greeks and Romans Idumea. From this time, the Idumeans ceased to be a separate nation, though the name Idumea still existed in the time of Jerome. While living in North Africa, many Edomites would wait for the perfect time to insert themselves into history as Jews, which was after the Spanish-Portuguese exile of the real black Israelites during the Spanish-Portuguese Inquisition in the late 1400s. Now let's reveal what ancient documents had to say about this. Now, according to ancient Iberian texts written in Old English, the Hebrew Israelites in Iberia prior to the Spanish-Portuguese Inquisition were black. They were also said to be from the tribe of Judah. Today, genetic research of ancient skeletons in Iberia, the Spanish-Portuguese colonies in Africa, the New World, and the Caribbean all point to a people whose descent comes from the Yoruba tribe, the Mandingo tribe, and the Congolese tribes. Now, it is a known fact that the ancient precursor to the E1B1A Y-DNA haplogroup has been only found among the Falasha Ethiopian Jews who claim to mixed ancestry from King Solomon and Queen Sheba of the Cushites. Also the Congo, Guinea-Bissau, Brazil, South America, which is a Portuguese territory where many Yorubas were sent as slaves. But wait, there's more. In ancient texts written in Old English, such as America being an accurate description of the New World by Scottish cartographer John Ogilvy in the 1600s, it documents, the Portuguese that dwelt on this island informed the Netherlanders that few lived above 50 years there, notwithstanding the great gain tempted to them to tarry, several of them having 200 to 300 Negroes that worked in the sugar mills, that John III, King of Portugal, sent a colony thither above 200 years before, whom thought the unwholesome air destroyed, yet the place was not left desolate. For he sent the new inhabitants who first settled in Guinea, next to Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, which is now known as Sao Tome, that so they might be better used to the air, that the said king sold all of those Jews for slaves, and refused to embrace the Roman religion, and caused their children to be baptized, from whom most of the present inhabitants are descended. Today in Cape Verde, the elderly black women there attest that their ancestors were the black Jews that were kicked out of Iberia during the 15th century. They were given many nicknames such as Naranos, Moranos, aka Moorish Jews, Judaeus, Segredos, which means secret Jews, and when they were forced to convert to Roman Catholicism, Novos Christos, aka New Christians. So can we prove that these Jews banished to the islands of Sao Tome or St. Thomas and Principe were black and not white? In the American Journal of Human Biology, volume 19, page 422 to 428, 2007, a study was done called Y Chromosome Lineages in Sao Tome and Principe Islands, Evidence of European Influence. It was done at the Human Genetics Laboratory in the University of Madeira, campus of Pentada, Funchal, Portugal. In 126 out of 150 genetic samples from the Sao Tome and Principe people of Foro, Angola, Manco, and Tonga descent, it showed an overwhelming presence of the Y DNA haplogroup E1B1A. The same paternal Y DNA seen in the Bantus people in Africa, African Americans, and Caribbean blacks. So as if this wasn't enough, the rabbit hole of truth gets deeper. In 1818, American author Hannah Adams wrote the book, The History of the Jews, from the destruction of Jerusalem to the present time. In it, she quotes, "The Spanish and Portuguese Jews claim their descent from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, with some among them of the tribe of Levi, and found these pretensions on a belief which prevails among them, that many of their ancestors were removed." Now, around the same time period, English physician and ethnologist J.C. Picard in 1786 quoted, "Especially dark were the Jews of Spain and Portugal. These Portuguese Jews were very dark." Also, the French writer Laure Hunaut, Duchess of Abrantes in the 1830s, quoted, "The Jew, the Negro, and the Portuguese can be seen in a single person." So according to all this evidence, if the Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews today claim they're from the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, or Levi, why did they decide to steal the identity of the real black Israelites that they sold into slavery? And why has Catholicism, Judaism, and Islam covered up the true identity of the people they enslaved? Now, while this cover-up has gone unnoticed for years, there are some influential people in the past that spoke out against this religious hoax. So they never thought that we as Negroes would wake up to our true identity. But the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob said that the Lion of Judah would wake up and begin to regale the 12 tribes. So now is the time for the hidden ones, the real children of Israel, to take their rightful position in the world. So how do we obtain our Israelite heritage back? How do we wake up the descendants of Israelites who were scattered to the four corners via exile and slavery? By spreading the truth with the correct history of where the 12 tribes of Israel went during the time period of the biblical Old Testament and New Testament. So right now, let's take a journey into Africa and beyond to see where the real Israelites of the Bible are at. 16th century Spanish anthropologist Antonio de la Calancha, when studying the Inca people of Peru, found a curious inscription discovered on a rock in Calango, Peru, a place situated at the distance of 15 leagues from Lima, Peru. The stone inscription consisted of a row of letters written in ancient Hebrew. Calancha published these findings in 1631 AD in Barcelona, Spain, in the literary work Crónica Moralizada de la Orden de San Agustín in Peru. In the year 1645 AD, it was said that the academic institutions in Iberia ordered the ancient Hebrew inscriptions on the stones to be defaced. In the 1500s AD, Spanish Catholic Bishop Diego de Landa found tons of books in Central America in the Yucatan, aka Mayan territory. Now, he is known for burning just about all the books written by the Mayans. Bishop de Landa was given the task of converting the Mayan people to Roman Catholicism, and in the process destroyed the Mayan language. In 1561 AD, he recorded, "Among the Maya, we found a great number, thousands of books, and we burned them all." But this does not even scratch the surface of how the Spanish covered up the true identity of the Aztec, Incan, and Mayan civilizations. In the Mayan civilization lowlands in modern-day northern Guatemala, southeastern Mexico, in the province of Petén to the south of the Yucatan, Central America, the Spaniards, during their expedition of 1696 AD, in the battles against the Mayan Itza people, found books written in ancient Hebrew. It was recorded in the 17th century in the Historia de la Provincia de San Vicente de Chiapa, Guatemala, by a Roman Catholic priest of the Dominican order, Francisco Ximenez. In the 1700s, in the visceral royalty of New Granada, aka North South America, in the Indian village of Urbana, as far as the western banks of the Cara River, a Franciscan monk named Raymond Bueno accidentally entered the cavern and saw characters which resembled the Hebrew Phoenician alphabet. Now, this was documented in a book written in 1827 by John Rankin called The Historical Researches on the Conquest of Peru, Mexico, Bogota, Natchez, and Tolomeco. Now, the Kingdom of Dahomey is now known as the modern country of Benin in West Africa. Benin is home to the Ewe, Fan, Aja, and Yoruba people. When the French controlled the capital of Benin, Porto Novo, it was called French Dahomey. But the Kingdom of Ouida, called Oyuda or Juda by the French, and Ajuda by the Portuguese, was home to constructed forts, each for the sole purpose of trafficking slaves to the Americas, Jamaica, and Haiti. But who were these slaves that were captured and sold? They were the Israelites. In the 1790 edition of the Memoirs in the Reign of Basa Ahade, King of Dahomey, by European slave trader and African traveler Robert Norris, a map was portrayed which was a direct eyewitness account by the English and French. On the map, they designated the town of Ouida as the country of the Jews. Now, why would a European slave trader refer to Dahomey, modern-day Benin, Togo, as the country of the Israelite? Well, let's see. Was it because the Dahomey king's apron consisted of 12 emblems that resembled the 12 stones of the 12 tribes of Israel on the Levitical high priest's breastplate of judgment? Or was it because Robert Norris observed many Hebrew traditions in Dahomey? As a slave trader in Dahomey, Robert Norris was well acquainted with the Dahomeyan language and customs. But there is more. In 1926, Dr. J. Kreppel, in his book about the Jews and Judaism, also reported a large Israelite community in the interior of Dahomey. He admits they have a central temple where animals are sacrificed at, and in the temple, laws were engraved on tablets that were attached to the temple walls. They also had a Torah written in Hebrew Aramaic letters written on old animal skins. Now, these Israelites of Dahomey observed the Sabbath and other Hebraic customs. And to add more proof to this, Abbé Pierre Boucher, a 19th century French historian and missionary, makes reference to a map by Jean d'Anville that states that the country of Negroes was formerly inhabited by Jews. He admitted that this was also found in earlier writings in the 11th century AD by Spanish Arab explorer Muhammad al-Idrisi. Now, Bain Hugh Clapperton was a Scottish naval officer and explorer of West and Central Africa. The second sultan of the Sokoto Caliphate, Mohammed Bello, was quoted in 1820 by Hugh Clapperton to have said that the Yoruba people were descendants of a Canaanite tribe. However, some say Yoruba is a corruption of the name Jacob, or in Hebrew, Jacob. Others assert that Yoruba is from Yorubabel, the people of Baal. Now this won't be a surprise because the Yoruba god of thunder and lightning named Shango is identical to the Canaanite pagan god Baal, the same god the Israelites worship all throughout the Old Testament, disobeying the Most High's first commandment of thou shalt not worship any other gods. Now the Yoruba sacred city called Ife was founded by the Yoruba deities named Oduduwa and Obatala when they created the world. And here's where it gets interesting. Oramiyan, the great prince of Ife, king of the Yoruba, also known as Orion, was the Yoruba king from the kingdom of Ile-Ife. The word Orion corresponds to the word Jacob in the Yoruba language. Therefore, Oramiyan's staff is called Jacob's staff. Certain historians state that the marking on Oramiyan's staff has the Hebrew words Yod, Shin, and Resh, or Resh and Yod. Now Resh means first, a beginning, and Yod means work, worship, make, or praise. Now some link the 10th Hebrew letter Yod to completion or creation, such as the 10 Commandments, 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. So together they mean first worship, first make, or first praise. Now the city Ile-Ife means today place of dispersion and expansion because the city was founded by the Yoruba pantheon as the place where man was first created before they expanded into the world. It is also seen as a sacred holy place of worship for the Yoruba people. Now consider this amazing fact. In the earlier Bibles in Old Swahili, which started in Tanzania with the Bantus people, the pronunciation of the Lord God is Yahuwah Mungu. In the Yoruba Bible, the people who were actually in Iberia as the black Jews from the tribe of Judah before the Spanish Inquisition, they used the word Oluwa, Olurun, Olurun, Abrahamu, Olurun, Isaki, Ati, Olurun, Jacobu, as the phrase, the Lord God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, as seen in Exodus 3:15. Now in Exodus 3:14, the phrase, I am that I am, can be pronounced as Emi, Ni, and Niti, Owa, or Iye, Ase, Iye, which means life eternal, let it be so, life eternal. Now again, is this a coincidence that the Yoruba people still have preserved in their language the name of the Elohim of the Israelites, the creator of the world? You be the judge. When talking about slavery in East Africa, you cannot begin without talking about the Arabs who sold the Negro Israelites into slavery on Zanzibar Island in Tanzania, East Africa. Now, one of the earliest Chinese sources describing Bantus Africans along the East Coast involves the testimony of Du Huan in his book Jing Xing Ji, which means Record of My Travels. Now, Du Huan was a Chinese prisoner of war captured by the Abbasid Caliphate Arabs around the 8th century AD near the city Samarkand, which is present-day Uzbekistan, during the Battle of Talas during the 8th century AD. This was a battle between the Arab Abbasid Caliphate, the Tibetan Empire, against the Chinese Tang Dynasty. Samarkand was a bridge city along the Silk Roads between the Middle East and China. Du Huan was able to escape, and in 762 AD, he wrote his literary work, which appeared in the Tong Dian, compiled by his relative Du Yu in 812 AD, describing his visit to present-day East Africa. So what did he have to say? He quoted, "The people are black and their customs uncouth. There is little rice or wheat and no grass or trees. The horses eat dried fish and the people eat gumang, Persian date. Epidemics and plagues are particularly severe in this kingdom. Traveling by land, the mountain whom one encounters are of only one type. But they have different kinds of law. They have the Arab Dashi law, the Roman Daquin law, and the Mosaic Zunzun law. These Zunzun laws exceed all the Yi and Di in their sexual depravity. They do not talk during meals, and those who follow the Dashi law rely on their relatives to dispense justice, and even if the fault is slight, others are not involved. They do not eat the meat of pigs, dogs, donkeys, horses, and the like. They do not revere the country's king or respect their fathers and mothers. They are great believers in ghosts and spirits and make offerings only to heaven. As for their customs, every seventh day is a day of rest. And on this day, they do not do business or collect loans, and they only drink wine and rejoice all day. So who were these Sabbath-keeping Bantus people? Now, the Arabs called them Zanj or Zanji, which means blacks, and the Chinese called them Zenji, Zenji, or Kunlun, devil slaves. But we know that this is proof that the slaves taken during the Arab slave trade to Asia were in fact the children of Israel. So the Bible says that the children of Israel will be gathered from the north, west, east, and the south. But modern Jewry tends to overlook and reject that any of the brown, Negroid-looking races in the Pacific Islands are the descendants of the children of Israel. But what does the Bible say?
Because these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinam.
In the Bible, the Hebrew word Sinim or Sinim consists of Shemek, Yod, Nun, Yod, and Mem. The word Shemek in Paleo-Hebrew means protect. The word Yod means work, hand, or worship. The word Nun means seed, fish, life, continue. The word Yod again means work, hand, and worship. And the word Mem means water in Paleo-Hebrew. So we could possibly get the following meaning: to protect, worship, to continue to worship, water. Among the Australian Aborigine tribes, the Warramungu tribe and the Mardudjara tribe practice circumcision as a rite of manhood. Just like many Bantus African boys undergo this religious rite of passage by the elders of their tribe. Now, Dr. Nick Reed, a linguistic expert at the University of New England, found the ancient stories of the Australian Aborigines to be similar to the stories told from people with Semitic ancestry. Now, the paternal Y-DNA haplogroup C, which is predominantly seen in the Australian Aborigines and Native Americans, was found in skeletons uncovered in the caves in ancient Israel. In 2016, this work was published by Harvard geneticist Iosif Lazardis and was shown in the BioRxiv magazine with the title The Genetic Structure of the World's First Farmers. Now, the paternal Y-DNA C was also found in the biological skeletal samples in ancient Medes, Persia, Iran, and in the Ganj Dareh Tepe area of western Iran. Now, this would mean that the Australian Aborigines and Native American Indians bearing the Y-DNA C could be the descendants of the exiled northern tribes of Israel.
Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes.
The pre-pottery Neolithic period skeletal remains found in Adlit Yam, Israel, matched up perfectly with the Australian Aborigine Y-DNA C haplogroup. The city of Adlit Yam falls into the ancient territory of the tribe of Manasseh and the tribe of Asher. Remember, Manasseh was the offspring of Joseph the Israelite and an Egyptian woman. Now, while investigating Aboriginal cultures in Australia in the 20th century AD, Professor A.P. Elkin of Sydney University in Australia came upon Aboriginal tribes in Australia displaying Semitic Mediterranean features with Egyptian words in their language. Now, it's a known fact that eucalyptus oil and leaves, which are seen in Australia, have been found in West Africa, used among the Bantus people, and they've also been found in Egypt. Also, Aboriginal carvings of a Levantine trireme shipping vessel were also found in Australia. In 1978, a black stone with Phoenician Paleo-Hebrew letters was found in Katoomba, Southeast Australia. In addition, numerous Levantine Israelite symbols have also been found in Aboriginal cave art in the areas of Northwest Kimberley, Arnhem Land, and Cape York, Australia. Among the symbols is the Paleo-Hebrew symbol Nakash or Nekosheth for copper or bronze. Now, why would there be Hebrew letters that describe copper and bronze in Australia? The only explanation would be that the children of Israel also made it to Australia, thus confirming the Israelites that would be scattered from Sinim or the southeast, according to the Bible. In the Pacific Islands, in the country of Papua New Guinea, there exist numerous tribes of Negroid-looking people. However, they do not have the same paternal haplogroup E1B1A as seen in the Bantus Negro people of Africa. So where did they come from and how did they get to Papua New Guinea? Even more, who are they? Now the Gogodala people in Papua New Guinea say their ancestors came by canoe from the Holy Land of Yabisaba, which is similar to the word Jabus and Yabus, seen in 1 Chronicles 11, verses 4-5. Today we know it as Jerusalem. Now there were two boats, long and sturdy, hand-carved from ancient trees. The red boat carried the Sagala clan and the yellow boat carried the Paya clan. The travelers that came from Israel to Papua New Guinea spoke the language of Israel, and they paddled in search of the far-off islands of Papua New Guinea, guided by the wisdom of an oracle called the Fire Source. Now the Gogodala people observed the Sabbath, and women were separated from the rest of the family during menses, and men were circumcised, and they adhered to a strict dietary law, and their language could be traced to Hebrew. When the Christian missionaries came, they destroyed the ancient Jewish practices and traditions. In East Africa, in Kenya, you cannot talk about the Israelites without mentioning the Kikuyu people. The Kikuyu people are brothers to the Luya, Maru, Embu, Kisi, and Kamba peoples. According to their history, Mount Kenya, known as Kirinyaga, was a seat of God or Nagai. Nagai created Kikuyu, the first man, and also his wife Mumbi. It is said that the Kikuyu people come from the land where the fig tree grows wild and free, and this is not Africa, but Israel. Now the fig tree, which the Kikuyu call Mugumo, grows wild in the Middle East, especially in Israel. The Bible says when things were well in Israel, every man was able to sit under his own fig tree. Christ also gives many parables about the fig tree. And to the Kikuyu, Mount Kenya, or Mount Kirinyaga, was called by the Egyptians Ta Natore, which like Ta Naturu means land of the gods. The 12 Kikuyu seers of the Wanjiru clan commit their service to God, operating in total secrecy and segregation from the community. Now it is said that the Haburu, Kaburu, or Hebrew clan of the Kikuyu people guards the sacred scrolls passed down from Moses with the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. Previously, the sacred scrolls and the Ark of the Covenant was believed to be in Axum, Ethiopia, until the Knights Templar, whom they called the People of the Cross and Red Costume, came looking for it, of course, to steal it. Now it is said that the Ethiopian and Hebrew seers in Axum then had the sacred Ark and scrolls taken south to Mount Kenya. Today, the Bantu tribes who settle around Mount Kenya still practice ancient Hebraic Mosaic laws and customs, such as a patrilineal society, polygamy, circumcision as a rite of passage, a jubilee year after 50 years, a bridal dowry gift, belief in one creator God, a diet which excludes pork, duck, donkey, horse, and mountains are seen as sacred places where God dwells. Is this a coincidence? Are they not Israelites? You be the judge. Now, Dr. William Bozeman wrote a book called A New and Accurate Description of the Coast of Guinea. Originally, his collection of letters, originally written in Dutch and first published in English in 1705, describes the geography and natural history of the coast of Guinea, West Africa. Now, Bozeman was born in 1672 and went to Africa at the age of 16 in the service of the Dutch West India Company and spent 14 years on the Gold Coast. The collection of letters written to his uncle in the Netherlands is an important source of information from the 1600s to the late 1700s AD. In his book, it talks about his travels to Guinea, West Africa, which says the Negroes still retain several laws and customs which favor Judaism, as their marrying of their brother's wife and several more. They seem the same in effect, as well as the names of which here in Guinea are several which occur in the Old Testament. Now, Guinea was described on ancient maps as being the current geographical location of West Africa. So what are the different types of Hebrew customs that were seen by the Reverend John Wilson and Dr. William Bozeman? Well, today in West Africa, many Bantu tribes still exhibit and practice the following Hebraic customs, such as circumcision on the 8th day, naming babies on the 8th day, the Nazareth vow, where the locks of the hair are grown and not cut, such as dada locks in Nigeria. The seventh day is a day of rest for people or livestock. The separation of women after childbirth or menses for 7 days, as in Leviticus 15. The ceremonial washing of hands. The levirate marriage, or the marrying of the brother's wife after death, takes place. The wearing of fringes on the borders of garments. The wearing of the breastplate of judgment with 12 stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Hebrew names ending in Yah. Blowing of the shofar horn in times of feasts, celebrations of war. Dietary laws against eating unclean animals. Animal sacrifices for sin. Slaughter practices of meat. The division of African tribes into 12. Blood sprinkling upon altars and doorposts. New moon celebrations, Passover feast, holidays with blood painted on the door, such as the Homo Festival and the New Yam Festival. Setting aside to God the firstborn males of livestock and herds. Intertribal marriages. Divination practices using kola nuts, palm nuts, shells, sticks, or sand, similar to the Urim and Thummim practices used by the Levitical Aaronite high priest to obtain answers of the will of God. We still see in the Bantu people in Africa the same ancient Israelite disobedience to the Torah in regards to idol worship, necromancy, aka ancestral worship, fortune-telling, interpretation of omens, mediums, charmers, witches, sorcerers, and astrology. And they have superstitions and laws and taboos in regards to hypopigmentation disorders. And they practice the casting of lots and the pouring of libations. Now, Mungo Park, in his book, Travels in the Interior Districts of Africa, written in 1810, observes the legal whippings among the Tisi people in Kasum, which is current Burkina Faso. He says the number of stripes were precisely the same as required by Mosaic law, 40, say 1, based on Deuteronomy 25, verse 3. He notes further that these people were neither Roman Catholic Christians or Muslims at the time. Mungo Park also notes reference to the Sabbath in that on the first appearance of the new moon, the Bantus natives say a short prayer to the Creator or Supreme Being. And this prayer is pronounced in a whisper, the party holding up his hands before his face. And the ceremony seems to be nearly the same which prevailed among the Hebrews in the days of Job. Now this is also in the Old Testament as well, in Isaiah chapter 66 verse 23, where it says, "And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship me, saith Yahuwah." Now in Mali or Niger, the Spanish Arab historian Leo Africanus wrote in 1526, "The king Askia Muhammad is a declared enemy of the Jews. He will not allow any to live in the city. If he hears it said that a Berber merchant frequents with them or does business with them, he confiscates his goods." Now the 18th century European traveler and historian Mungo Park, documenting in his book Travels in the Interior of Africa, quote, he said that there were many Jews at Timbuktu, Mali, but they all spoke Arabic and used the same prayers as the Moors. I discovered that the Negroes are in possession, among others, of an Arabic version of the Pentateuch or Torah of Moses, which they call Taruta la Musa. Now, many historians agree that the Bantus expansion happened in modern-day Congo and Cameroon, the only two countries with the highest percentage of Bantus people today. Many Bantu South Africans have ancestral roots to the Congo and the Nguni people. History states that the Nguni people who migrated to the Congo to South Africa also were the direct ancestors of the Zulu, Xhosa, Swazi, and the Ndebele people. They too also had Hebrew customs, like their Bantu brothers scattered throughout the sub-Saharan Africa. Here are some examples. In Zulu folklore, links are said to exist between the Zulu people, Egypt, the Old Testament, and Israel. The Zulu Nguni people existed as pastoralists and subsistence farmers. Like the ancient Hebrews, wealth was measured in cattle, and they have belief in a supreme deity. Circumcision was practiced as a rite of passage, and the tradition of a younger brother marrying the widow of his deceased brother, as in the levirate marriage, was also practiced. The daubing of the lintels of homes in times of sickness, the festival of the first fruits, and so on was also practiced. The laws of the Amazulu are identical to the Mosaic law. The practice of war offerings, sin offerings, and offerings to appease God, periods of uncleanliness on the decease of relatives and touching the dead, rules regarding chastity, dietary laws, and the rejection of swine flesh. Now the Zulus kept annual feasts and observed the new moons as the old Hebrews did. And the Zulus had festivals at the beginning of the spring and at the end of the autumn, corresponding to the Feast of First Fruits and the Feast of Ingathering of the ancient Hebrews. And the Zulus also had a special way to butcher sacrificial meat and also the burning of incense for sacrificial and other ritual purposes, which is also seen in the ancient Hebrews. Now the word kafir was given to the Bantu people in South Africa by their oppressors. Now the word kafir in Arabic means one that doesn't believe in God. And on the ancient maps, South Africa is listed as Kafiria, similar to the Arabic word kafir. Now the Bantu South Africans were also labeled the people of the book by the Arabs, and the word Bantus by the Zulu people means the people. Now with all this information, it's clear that we can see that the Bantus people in West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, and South Africa are the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible. In Isaiah 46:10, the Bible lets us know that Yah declares the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, things that are not yet done. Many African Americans, like myself, have always asked the question, where do we come from? My father's father once told me, back in the late 1800s and 1900s, we didn't have records of our parents or grandparents. We were back then sold as slaves, just like livestock. So my grandfather's father was born in Martinsville, Virginia, and I raised my grandfather in Roanoke, Virginia. Later, he would move to West Virginia to seek work in the railroad company and coal mining company. And my father would be the first out of his family to graduate from college and later become a pastor of a Pentecostal Apostolic church. And the Most High revealed to me years ago that before I came out of my mother's womb, that he would use me like others to become a vessel to spreading his message. Just as the Most High allowed the old generation of Israelites to die out in the wilderness to bring in the new, young generation of Israelites with Joshua into the Promised Land, the Most High's planning for the mass awakening of the diaspora to the Israelite identity could not have come at a more crucial time. I realized that everything that I had been through from childhood to adulthood, all was by design, to build me up and prepare me for the stage of my life where he would need me the most. This will be in the education of the masses with the books and the movie Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up Black America. So this is my message in closing. In the Bible, Christ said, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." For centuries, African Americans and black people all over the world affected by the slave trades have lived and died without knowing the truth about their biblical Israelite identity. From the 1600s until now, we can still see in America and beyond the effects of us not knowing who we truly are. Marcus Garvey once quoted, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." And right now, we are living in a time where the Most High is miraculously moving among his scattered, chosen people to wake up his sheep so that we can prepare ourselves to endure to the end until the return of Christ. Now, as situations across the world get worse for God's chosen people, the Most High is putting out his final call, the call to clean ourselves up and return to him in spirit and in truth. But first, we must wake up. Now, Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy, and Satan also is the father of lies. Therefore, after watching this film, we should now know who is running the world. It is not a coincidence that the powers behind the three Abrahamic religions that enslaved our Israelite ancestors will also go through so much trouble to keep our identity a secret. They knew and still know the future prophecy concerning the God of Israel and the real children of Israel. With that being said, now that you know who are the real children of Israel, we should be able to prepare ourselves spiritually and physically for what is to come, according to what is prophesied about us in the Gentile nations in the book of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, Matthew, Ezekiel, and the book of Revelation. Lastly, too many of us today are still caught up in Babylon in the spirit of fear. The test for us in the future will be who we will choose to trust and serve. So once we decide that we will choose to follow the Most High, how do we show that we love him according to the first greatest commandments? It's by keeping his commandments. And how are we making it to the kingdom? By being born again, washing the blood of the Lamb who died for us, Yahusha, HaMashiach, our Messiah, our Redeemer, our King forever, and our Savior. Shalom.
are many Black Americans that are waking up to Torah and returning to their roots, but they took it away from us in slavery. Can you give us some words of encouragement for Black Americans who are returning to Torah?
Yes. I hope God has really blessed the blacks because the Torah was for us, but they took it away from us. And now that we see that the Torah is for us, we all people should be encouraged to go back and take the Torah so that our people will not take it from us because it is our culture, it is our thing that our ancestors were given. So I encourage every Black American to get out to know the Torah, that the Torah was given to them because Jacob was a black, he was not a white. So I urge everyone who has really going to study the Torah that he will have courage and have the ability to come out with the Torah so that God would let it bless us, God would let us know our destiny in this way. And we pray that everybody who has take this opportunity will find be fruitful. He will bless his people, and Adonai will also help him. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen.
So I'm Akwasi Boache Dankwa. You can easily call me Prince. Work at Malaysia Palace Museum as a tour guide. Asante we are talking about here migrate from Israel in the Mesopotamia. Right. That was somewhere in the 14th century. Right. And Asantes are currently located in Ghana, West Africa. It's the largest tribe here in Ghana. And Asantes were of individual states which came together to form the Asante Kingdom. They started fighting, expanding the kingdom to Togo, Ivory Coast, and Burkina Faso. Talking about the neighboring country here in West Africa. And Asantes we are talking about here is the largest tribe in Ghana. That makes Asante the king between 402 to the second currently, the most influential person here in the country, in Ghana.
Thank you so much. And do you know what led them to migrate from Israel? Did something happen?
Yes. The Asantes were much interested in agriculture businesses. They were looking for land, fertile lands I'm talking about, for plantations. So through that, the Asantes migrated to current day West Africa, where they felt very comfortable through their migration.
Thank you so much.
right here is a call and response. So when I say Shema, you go. When I say Shema, you go. When I say Shema, you go. And at the last one, you're going to go. Yeah, yeah. Sounds good? So let's warm it up, let's warm it up, let's warm it up. I said now. Shema, ready? 1, 2, 3, Shema. Shema Israel, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Shema Israel, Shema Israel, Yahuwah Eloheinu, hallelujah. Shema Israel, Shema Israel, Shema Israel. 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 1, 2, 3, Shema, Shema Israel, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah
If you come against the scriptures, man, we gon' rise up. If you come against our heritage, we gon' rise up. It don't matter, anybody get it, man, we gon' rise up, rise up. We rise up. If you come against the king, man, we gon' rise up. If you come against our Elohim, we gon' rise up. It don't matter, anybody get it, man, we gon' rise up, we rise up. Rise up and rise up.
Oh me, oh mine. Atheist tweet, no I'm G. Life came to a standstill and it got real with the prophecies. Every time we the pass go, monopolize the monopoly. You give us 200, take 300, charge us for the property. Y'all gave us this authority. To be honest, got it honestly. Which means we are joint heirs. Siamese twins on the trampoline. We speak what he wrote. Melania's speech, Michelle's notes. Israel hit the ground running like a breech birth cause we got home. Hold up. Yeshua is the Messiah. It's his will over our will, so we call us student drivers. He calls us his song. Sorry, Mariah. Posted to carry these notes. Address it, all outsiders, we will rise up.
If you come against the scriptures, man, we gon' rise up. If you come against our heritage, we gon' rise up. It don't matter, anybody get it, man, we gon' rise up, rise up. We rise up. If you come against the king, man, we gon' rise up. If you come against our Elohim, we gon' rise up. It don't matter, anybody get it, man, we gon' rise up, we rise up. Yeah. Rise up. Rise up.
Rise up in the morning. See my people in poverty. Crying out to my people. They asking me why you bother me. Slaves, we living in colonies, walking like zombies with breath with lobotomies. gospel preacher man, a creature man. Down low with them sodomies. And no, it isn't an oddity, rather the norm, so check that academy. They say that it ain't easy. I guess that's the academy. But rise of getting anatomy. Know that they lie to me, no longer lie to me. The shoe flipped up the process. Yeah, I molded the pottery. Hold up, hold up, hold up. What they gonna do when it's true? Will they ever grow up? Cause some brother be with the gold and the brother plant seed with the so what? You remember the what? What you gonna be when the blow when the hammer seed then it roll up? Then you're gonna go up. You better read what you know of mainframe DP into co-op. If you come against the scriptures, man, we gon' rise.
To slavery on the effects of slavery and colonialization on the blacks and Hispanics or the Hebrew Israelites,
which are mostly in, sad to say, in the Christian church, which don't belong there, but they're there. And I believe many of them are going to come out. Many of them are going to start realizing. They're going to start waking up. Now, show them this book, Josh. Show them the cover of this book. You've got to get this book. Get this book, please. He's got 3 volumes. We have the second one.
And the first one.
And the first one. And believe me, right, Josh? We're going back through it, and it's blessing us more and more and more. How much you would miss.
For 30,
and we've missed some things.
For a mere $30,
it's worth every penny.
It's worth every cent of the price.
Yeah.
For the wealth of information and knowledge and understanding you can gain from reading books.
Like Josh said tonight, you can never have enough understanding of what's really going on.
And it's a sad cliche, but it's true. The best way to hide something from a Negro is put it in a book.
Is that I'm not a racist person, nor am I a person that hates certain individuals. I love all of humanity. I want to see all of humanity making a new kingdom. But nevertheless, there is true Hebrews. There's a true people of the Most High that is scattered throughout the nations of the earth this day. It is not whom that many people believe they are, such as the so-called Jews in the nation-state of Israel that we so see before us right now. I would interject that the true biblical Hebrews are the so-called African-American people that are scattered abroad throughout the world.
The dog ended up biting me on my left arm.
I'm so sorry.
Did you have a leash?
No, but before then
I don't care what happened before then. Before then, I was 21 years old and I looked great in a bikini.
This is Judy Justice.
Yeah, Bishop Grady back again. You know, damn, that was a long ass movie. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm a little tired, like, from watching that shit. For real, for real. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, I want to know your thoughts. If you made it to this point, I want to know what you think. Like, you know what I mean? Put some comments down below. You know what I'm saying? Any sort of information that helps us discern what's real in the documentary or what's not real in the documentary. Like, please present that. Please, I want this to be, I know it's going to be difficult because the topic is very touchy, it's very sensitive. That the outcome of accepting certain truths or non-truths in this documentary could spell life or death to some people. So I don't want to be insensitive to that. However, I think if we're going to come to truth, if we're going to come to knowledge, we have to be able to have open dialogue about this. So this being Black Fox News, you know, we're not like them demons over at White Fox News. Like, we're gonna move towards the ultimate truth. And that comes through dialogue, that comes through sharing information. Some people may need to be checked. However, we are not going to tolerate any violent speech on the platform. We're not tolerating any hate speech. You know what I'm saying? Like any speech. And we're not going to keep the conversations and the dialogue intellectually disciplined, sound. Keep these proofs academic, and let's not just add some more confusion with unfounded conclusions. You know what I'm saying? Keep your intellectual integrity. Keep your arguments just logically sound, if you are going to dialogue about this. So like I said, I definitely want y'all to comment below. You know what I mean? Black Fox News, we encouraging the dialogue, but if y'all get too outrageous with the comments, your comments will be blocked or deleted. And we gonna move from there. You know what I mean? In my personal viewing of in my personal opinion of it, I felt like I felt like it was definitely some things that made sense in there, but I felt like there should have been more sourcing going on. If what he's saying is true, there should have been some cross-pollination of academic research that would have been able to be cited and put into the movie by historians or theologians who've looked deeply into the matter. If the things he was saying was true, and I didn't see a lot of that, but certain conclusions that were being made did seem to have a flow, have a pattern, did seem to make sense. It was highlighting a lot of the Bible, and if a lot of people are religious and believe it in religious, that in Christianity, I mean, the Bible is the text, so that is a big proof in and of itself, as far as like what determining what happened in history and what's going on present day. And the Bible is being used in ways that seem consistent with the things the brother was saying, the narrator of the documentary. Further than that, you'll probably need to just, either holler at me or wait till you catch Bishop in an interview, or, maybe I'll do an editor's note on it or something like that. I don't know, I probably won't, but, somebody interviews me about that, you want to know more about what I think of it, you can catch me then. Honestly, some things I'll need to research. There's a lot of information in that. So if you're not feeling like, if you're not coming away from that feeling like you need to research anything, you know what I'm saying? I might be looking at you like, you might not be somebody I could take seriously, academically or whatever, unless you already got the knowledge, unless you've already proven some of these things. But I don't know. I appreciate when things happen in the culture that make us want to know more as a people, know more about ourselves. Because I feel like overall, only positive things for our people can come from that. But what do you think? Again, comment below. Peace and love. Green War and Graduation.